Chapter 108, Third Imperial Prince. Ling Han, carrying Hu Niu in his arms, stepped out of the room with Qi Zhantai accompanying them. However, Fu Yuansheng was still a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier after all. At the very moment the group of three stepped out the door, he immediately came back to reality, and with a quick leap exited as well and said, "Young Master Han, are you leaving?" My role's over, so of course I'm leaving." Ling Han waved around the pill bottle that contained the 7-second star pills, looking very pleased. "Please allow me to see you off, young Master Han," Fu Yuansheng said in a very sincere tone. He was already completely convinced by Ling Han's incredible skill in alchemy. Ling Han smiled and nodded. If Fu Yuansheng wanted to see him off, that was fine with him. They walked down the stairs, and right when they reached the beginning of the stairs, a servant boy approached and said, "Pavilion Master, the third Imperial Prince expressed his wish to meet with you." "Oh." Fu Yuansheng stared blankly for a moment, then said, "I was just about to go down, so don't concern yourself with this anymore." "Understood." The servant boy nodded quickly. He had just spotted Ling Han and Qi Zhantai, which caused him to be lost for words, because they actually had Fu Yuansheng leading them downstairs, which was an extreme shock to him. That was Fu Yuansheng, one of the few most powerful and most respected people of Rain Country. The three of them soon arrived at the ground floor and saw there was a young man and woman standing there. The two of them were standing upright, showing absolutely no sign of impatience. The man and the woman both seemed to be about 25 or 26 years old. The man was quite tall and had thick black locks. His eyes were bright and expressive, and held a penetrating gaze as if he could look into the secrets hidden in the deepest parts of the heart of anyone his gaze fell upon. The woman had a very shapely, tempting figure, able to cause any normal man's mouth to start watering. Her face was very beautiful and her skin was as fair as white jade. Her hair was actually an unusual crimson shade of fire, which granted her a very unique charm. The man was naturally the third Imperial Prince, Qi Fengyun, but who was this woman? Ling Han was slightly surprised because this woman was astonishingly in Gushing Spring tier. In Rain Country, this kind of a small place, a martial artist that had managed to reach Gushing Spring tier before reaching 30 years old had indeed made an astonishing accomplishment. She definitely could be categorized as a genius. Pavilion Master. The third Imperial Prince performed the proper formalities of greeting an elder upon seeing Fu Yuansheng. It was true that he was an Imperial Prince, but even if he had inherited the throne and was crowned the Emperor someday, he would still have to treat Fu Yuansheng with utmost politeness and courtesy. Zhantai hereby greets third elder Imperial brother. Qi Zhantai bowed slightly to greet the third Imperial Prince. "And wait here for a moment. Just let me see off this very honored guest first," Fu Yuansheng said, nodding at the third Imperial Prince. Very honored guest. The third Imperial Prince could not help casting his gaze at Ling Han, because there were only 3 people standing behind Fu Yuansheng. Qi Zhantai belonged to the royal house of the Deyuan king, so naturally it was not possible that she would be worth such prioritized treatment from Fu Yuansheng, and Hu Niu was too small. This young man, who was he that he was addressed by Fu Yuansheng as very honored guest, and make Fu Yuansheng actually personally see him off? That was strange. He had obviously gotten hold of all the relevant, important intel of the Imperial City, so how was it possible that such an awesome character would suddenly appear out of nowhere? "Please go ahead, Pavilion Master," he said quickly. As Fu Yuansheng escorted Ling Han out the door, he kept repeatedly inviting him to frequently come over and visit him at the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion before finally turning back round and leaving. He seemed to be slightly impatient, was very much in a rush to study the 4-form seal closely. Ling Han walked together with Qi Zhantai, while Hu Niu waved her little hands around excitedly and kept saying, "Meet, meet, meet." That brother ahead. The third Imperial Prince had caught up with them. Ling Han paused and looked over at the third Imperial Prince and said, "Yes?" Wasn't the third Imperial Prince looking for Fu Yuansheng? Why had he chased after them? The answer was very simple. There has suddenly appeared a person that even Fu Yuansheng would respectfully escort in the Imperial City as the third Imperial Prince. He would of course want to get to know this kind of person at the first opportunity. One had to understand that the Rain Emperor had 17 sons in total. Out of these 17 sons, there were at least 5 that were qualified to compete for the throne. The third Imperial Prince would naturally befriend capable people with utmost patience in order to accumulate a power base for the day when he would be joining in the competition for the throne. "I am Qi Fengyun. If I may ask, could you tell me your respected name, brother?" The third imperial prince behaved in an extraordinarily polite manner. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "My name is Ling Han. Brother Ling, I still have some matters to deal with, so it is really not convenient for me to talk too long. I hope that Brother Ling will accept this item as a gift from me. I believe that, in this imperial city, a lot of people would give you a bit of face because of this item." The third imperial prince handed over a violet-shaped badge. "Thank you." Ling Han did not make any pretenses of modesty and accepted the badge from the third imperial prince. "Brother Ling, when I am done dealing with these matters, I will definitely seek you out for a chat," the third imperial prince said, raising his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction before once again leaving in a rush with that beauty behind him. Ling Han smiled as he weighed the badge in his hand and placed it into his pocket. "Ling Han, this is a token of the third imperial prince. According to the rumors, the holder of this badge can eat at any restaurant of the imperial city and not pay a single cent. Everything will be paid for by the third imperial prince," Jianghu said enviously. Ling Han was stunned for a short moment, before suddenly breaking out into loud laughter. Jianghu was curious, so naturally asked him why he had laughed. "I think that the third imperial prince will definitely regret this," Ling Han said. "Why?" "Because there's a real glutton right here," Ling Han said as he rubbed Hunyo's head. Jianghu was still baffled. Hunyo was just a little girl. Even if she ate from morning to night, how much could she eat? "There really are good people in this world," Ling Han said ruefully. The three of them left to have a meal at a restaurant. When she saw Hunyo's terrifying appetite, Jianghu finally began to worry about that clansman of hers. There was a real chance that Qi Fengyun would be driven to poverty at the rate that Hunyo ate. Huyang Academy, Feng Luo's room. Bastard, bastard, bastard. Wei Heelu was pacing around in the room like a maniac, his eyes bloodshot, looking very surly. He finally stopped pacing and said to Feng Luo, "Do you believe it? Do you believe it? Headmaster Wu actually expelled me from the alchemy department." Feng Luo's mouth twitched a few times. This was not the first time that Wei Heelu had complained and grumbled to him. He counted internally this should be the 37th, or was it the 38th time? Previously he would still offer a bit of response and comfort Wei Heelu a bit, but now he was completely not in the mood for it. Having lost Wu Songlin's regard, a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist naturally would not be someone looked upon too seriously by him. "It's all because of that bastard, that damn brat." Wei Heel's eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. He had been so glorious, able to boast and basking in the spotlight as a genius of alchemy. Even those from the royal or noble families had to treat him politely and with courtesy. But now, it was as if he had dropped down from this extremely high position all the way to the bottom of the pit. His future was bleak and dark. A person who had been chased out by Wu Songlin, what alchemist would still dare to take him in as a disciple? Moreover, alchemy skill depended very much on imparted knowledge. If it was simply dependent on self-learning, what could he even manage to accomplish? Which meant that he was completely done for. Feng Luo saw all this happen, and could not hold back a cold smile from turning up the corners of his lips before saying, "Young Master Wei, I have a suggestion that would really cause some serious trouble for that brat." He had lost a considerable number of teeth, so he was forced to speak with a lisp now. One had to cautiously decipher his words before being able to understand what he was trying to say. "Oh, what suggestion would that be?" Wei Heelu immediately turned to look at him. The current him had lost practically everything, so he had become absolutely crazy. As long as he could get his revenge on Ling Han, he was willing to do whatever insane thing it was. "Here it's this." Feng Luo took out a badge carved in the shape of a violet. "What's this?" Wei Heelu said blankly. "This is a token of the third imperial prince," Feng Luo said with a very devious smirk. "This is something that the third imperial prince gifted to my brother. Tell me, if I said I lost this badge, yet this badge was discovered in Ling Han's place, how would the academy deal with him? And how would the third imperial prince react?" Wei Heel's eyes lit up in understanding. Frame Ling Han. Chapter 109, Framed. Ha! Theft is an evil, shameless act in the first place, what more when it actually involves the third imperial prince? Wei Heelu could not hold himself back from laughing. At that time, even if the academy had no intention of pursuing the matter further, due to the involvement of the imperial family, even Wu Songlin's reputation would be of no use. Anything related to the imperial family was never small, and Ling Han actually dared to steal, an item belonging to the third imperial prince. That was a definite pathway to death. However, there should still be a reason, right? Otherwise, what would a thief steal this thing for? Wei Lu asked, his laughter very quickly stopping. Feng Luo snickered and said, "This is a token of the third imperial prince that he has only gifted to a rare few people. The holder of this token would be considered as a dear friend of the third imperial prince. It is not only a symbol of status and identity, it also means that all charges the holder incurred at any restaurant or inn in the imperial city would all be placed on the third imperial prince's tab." Yeah. Wei Lu looked extremely envious. Although he was a genius of alchemy, he had not managed to obtain the third imperial prince's favor, and wasn't gifted with such a priceless token. Now actually seeing a profligate, spoiled young master holding onto one, how could he not be envious? Feng Luo smiled very proudly. This was given to him by Feng Yan, who had feared that his little brother would get into trouble in the imperial city. If Feng Luo possessed a token of the third imperial prince, then no matter who it was, they would have to give the third imperial prince some face. He patted Wei Li's shoulder and said, "Young Master Wei, the task of framing Ling Han would be your job." Me? Wei Lu looked troubled at this. He only knew how to concoct alchemical pills, play around and show off, but framing someone was something he had never done before. Moreover, in the past there were too many people who wanted to curry his favor, so no matter what job he wanted done, he only needed to say it and there would be someone willing to do that job for him. When had he ever needed to personally do anything? "What is it? Are you not willing?" Feng Luo smiled coldly. He pretended to put away the token, "Then just forget about it. I just wanted to help you vent your anger in the first place, but since you're unwilling to do it, then I will not force you either." "Wait." Wei Lu hurriedly called out, gritted his teeth and said, "I'll do it." He was extremely embittered in his heart. He had offended Ling Han, but wasn't it all because he had stood up for Feng Luo? But now this guy actually said he wanted to help him vent his anger, and then he was really turning his back on him, absolutely heartless. But after he had been abandoned by Wu Songlin, he was no longer the young Master Wei of old, but only a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist. What right did he have to go against Feng Luo? Feng Luo had a genius of martial arts standing behind him that could vaguely be close to the level of absolute geniuses like the third imperial prince and Kenyi. Because of his brother, Feng Luo's own future prospects would be immeasurable. How was a down-and-out alchemist like him supposed to compare with that? Due to his current dire circumstances, Wei Lu could only bow his head in acquiescence. If he dared to refuse Feng Luo now, that would mean cutting off his only chance for a bright future. If he followed after Feng Luo, he could possibly leave Rain Country in the future, and thus get out of Wu Songlin's shadow. He accepted the violet-shaped badge and silently walked to Feng Luo's side. His hands were lowered at his sides, obviously placing his position at a lower level than the latter. "Ha ha ha ha." Feng Luo laughed loudly, his face filled with pride. Even his brother had never thought that he would be able to take a slightly talented alchemist into his camp, had he? Let's see who dared to still say that he was a spoiled young master. Why don't you try taking in a yellow-grade alchemist to show your own ability? Wei Lu lowered his head, his eyes filled with hatred and regret. But things have already advanced to this step, there was no way he would be able to return things to how they were before. After enjoying a meal with Ling Han, Jianghu naturally returned to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, while Ling Han brought Hunyo for another walk around the shops and bought some materials to set up the restrictions around his courtyard. He then returned to the academy. He was now not in much of a rush to take the second star pill. His priority now was to set up certain restrictions in the surrounding area of his courtyard. This was an early warning system. If anyone intruded into the courtyard, they would definitely disturb the restrictions in place, which would then release an alarm that only he could sense. Even if he was not in the room, there would still be clues left behind that would tell him that an intruder had broken into his courtyard. There was nothing to be done about it. He had very limited materials on hand, so he could only set up such simple restrictions. If it was in his last life, possibly not even powerful warriors of Heaven tier would dare to barge through the restrictions he could set up. I'll just have to make use of whatever is available to me. I don't have any enemies now anyways, he murmured. If Lu Yutong, Qi Yongyi and the others had heard his words, they would definitely jump out in objection. No enemies? He really dared to say that. Hu Bo was one, Feng Yan was another, He Junqin could also be considered as one, and there was also Nangongji. All these people were not easily trifled with, especially Hu Bo and Feng Yan. Hu Bo was a young master of the main line of the Hu clan, and Feng Yan was a genius of martial arts that had the potential to become a ruler. If these people were still not considered enemies, then who would Ling Han actually consider enemies? Unfortunately, they did not know that while Ling Han's current cultivation level was very weak, there was still the pride of a powerful warrior of heaven tier in his bones. How could he actually take these small rascals seriously? Furthermore, in his last life, he had the same kind of attitude, possessing a deep-set pride within him. He would never bow his head to anyone. The restriction was extremely simple, so Ling Han did not expend too much time on setting it up. After that, he swallowed a second star pill, and began to strengthen his divine sense. From what Ling Han knew, there was no cultivation technique in this world that could strengthen divine sense. Only when the cultivation level rises would a martial artist's divine sense advance to the next level. This was a very passive process. For example, when he was still in heaven tier in his last life, his soul only needed to tremble slightly, and he could even directly erase the soul of a powerful warrior of spiritual infant tier. But he had always suspected that since divine sense could be recovered through cultivation techniques and strengthened with the use of alchemical pills or divine medicine, then it should also be possible to cultivate divine sense through cultivation techniques. The only thing was that this kind of cultivation technique was not discovered yet. This was not impossible. After all, if it was not for the fact that he had come from 10,000 years in the past, how would he have known that there were so many pill formulae that had been lost in the passage of time now? Obviously, there is a lot of good stuff that has been lost on the pages of history. Since it was like this in his current lifetime, then how could his last life be an exception to this theory? A very real example was seen from the very last period of his last life, when he had visited various ancient historical sites from which he had obtained a few ancient pill formulae, which could all be considered to belong to the category of lost with time. Thus, perhaps many, many years ago there may have been a cultivation technique that was meant to refine one's divine sense. As he pondered, he was still absorbing the medicinal effects of the second star pill. He suddenly felt very comfortable, for the soul was responsible for all the feelings and sensations of the body. Now that his divine sense was strengthened, he would of course feel an indescribable invigoration. One after another, very soon he had taken all 7 second star pills. My soul is almost twice as strong now. Ling Han's eyes snapped open. His eyes had become even deeper than before, as if they were twin bottomless pits, causing anyone who looked into his eyes unable to help but fall deeply into them. He smiled. This is a benefit of strengthening my divine sense. Using my divine sense to dominate over my opponent could be considered as my unique move. If my opponent has no defense against this kind of attack, then there is a high chance that I could kill him in an instant. The current strength of my soul should be equivalent to the cultivation level of Gushing Spring tier. His smile grew wider. This means that I would be able to absorb spiritual chi at the rate of a martial artist of Gushing Spring tier for my cultivation, and together with my immortal grade spirit base, the rate of advance of my cultivation level would probably shock even me. I have to quickly reach Gushing Spring tier. Only when I have reached Gushing Spring tier will I be able to practice black grade cultivation techniques. That is the real beginning to the path of martial arts. Now, I am filled with advanced high-level knowledge, yet have no ability to make use of what I have. This kind of feeling is really horrible. A rat has sneaked in. Chapter 110, Dropping In. Ling Han really had not thought that this would happen. He had just barely set up the restriction around his courtyard, and he already had a night visitor coming in for a visit. One has to understand that the place he was occupying now could actually be considered a haunted house, a place no one would be living in. If one argued that there so happened to be a burglar who had no understanding of the inner workings of the academy and somehow stumbled onto this place to commit theft, then the possibility of this happening was really too low. Who could this thief be? Russell. Hunyo suddenly stood up. She had the alert senses of a wild beast. Her nose might be even more powerful than a dog's, and she may have already caught the scent of the thief. Shoo. Ling Han gestured her to stay quiet. He had no desire to scare off the thief. He wanted to know why the latter had come first. Hunyo was firmly ensconced in his hold, and she immediately became quiet. However, her eyes still brimmed with a baleful look. In her beast-like way of looking at the world, this was her territory, and anyone who dared to trespass whoever it was should be bitten to death. A dark figure made their way inside, yet did not move around everywhere. They only walked around the living room once before fumbling about a table a few times. After a while, the intruder turned around and left quietly. A sliver of a smile crossed the corners of Ling Han's lips. At the instant the intruder had left, Ling Han had taken advantage of the moonlight to clearly see the face of the intruder. Wei Hilo. Ling Han walked into the living room, lit a candle and approached the table. There was a wooden box on the table and inside lay a few cheap little trinkets. When he opened the box he saw that there was something new within. A badge carved in the shape of a violet. This is... Ling Han could not hold back a strange smile as he took out another violet-shaped badge from within his pocket. This had been gifted to him by the third imperial prince. Now he had two such badges. Why had Wei Hilo secretly stuffed a violet badge into his hands? Oh. Instantly he understood what was going on here. This was an attempt to set him up. There would definitely be someone who would be reporting having lost the item, and Wei Hilo would lead people to his place. Naturally they would find the lost item here, and by that time, there was no way he would be able to escape being accused of theft. Moreover, the stolen item was even a token of the third imperial prince. No one would dare to suppress this issue, and by that time, the lightest punishment he would get would be expulsion from the academy, but it was another story whether the third imperial prince would send his own people to deal with him or not. The unfortunate thing was that Wei Hilo would never have imagined that he would have coincidentally encountered the third imperial prince today. He had even been presented with a violet badge from the latter. However, even if he had not met the third imperial prince today, since he had discovered the existence of this scheme, there was no way that he could still be successfully set up. Since you want to play, then I'll play with you a bit. Ling Han smiled calmly and replaced the lid of the box, having no intention at all to remove that badge from within. A cold gleam flashed through his eyes. Since there was someone who wanted to die so desperately, then he would just have to let him die. He returned to the inner chambers and began cultivation. After his divine sense had been strengthened, the efficiency of his cultivation had risen to a whole new level. As massive amounts of spiritual qi gushed into him, it was all absorbed by his 5 elements mixed chaos lotus, and with the strict control granted to him by his powerful divine sense, this spiritual qi was swiftly converted into origin power to strengthen his origin nuclei. Originally, I would have needed around a month to rise to the next layer, but with how things are now, probably half a month would be enough. Ling Han smiled. After his divine sense was completely exhausted, he began to cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll in order to advance from body of dead tree to body of rock cliff. When he has completely grasped body of rock cliff, he'd be able to parry sharp weaponry with his bare hands. The sturdiness of his physical body would become even more terrifying than that of some races with exceptionally powerful natural defense. When he had finished cultivation, there had already appeared a sliver of white in the east. It was only now that he lay down to rest. Meditation could substitute for a part of the sleep he needed. Thus, he only needed to sleep for 1 or 2 hours, and it would be enough for him to be energetic for the rest of the day. When dawn came the next day, he went over to Mo Gao's courtyard to discuss the art of the sword with him again. One of them was an expert in the art of the sword, while the other had an exceptionally high level of comprehension, and so naturally they would be able to use each other as reference and thus improve themselves. They had only experienced 2 discussions with each other, yet the benefits both had received were quite deep. Pung pung pung. Just when the 2 of them were embroiled in a fierce discussion, they heard someone banging on the door which rudely interrupted their conversation. Mo Gao suddenly looked extremely displeased. His fondness for the art of the sword had almost reached the level of insanity. Once he was embroiled in a discussion about sword techniques, even if it was the gods themselves here for a visit, he would ignore them. He walked over to the entrance, opened the door, and saw that there were over 10 people standing at his doorway. Is Ling Han here? A young man dressed in green-colored long robes took 1 step forward, his chin proudly raised, looking extremely arrogant in his demeanor. However, he did have the right to be arrogant, for he was astonishingly in gushing spring tier, a much more powerful martial artist than even Mo Gao. Who are you people, and what are you looking for my student for? Mo Gao questioned instead of stepping out of their way and allowing them entry. Teacher Mo, we are members of the discipline committee. Another young man dressed in black walked forwards, though his tone was much more even. Of course, this had something to do with his cultivation level because he was similarly in element gathering tier, so he did not have much of an advantage over Mo Gao in terms of cultivation level. Don't speak so much nonsense, tell Ling Han to come out quickly. The young man in green robes shouted impatiently, with no hint of caring about Mo Gao. Mo Gao stared blankly for a moment and then said, "What offense has my student committed that requires the discipline committee to take action?" The Discipline Committee, as the name suggested, was an organization that was in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations of the academy. However, the majority of the members of this committee were students, and it could also be considered as a type of part-time job, for the members could earn academic points. Moreover, the members also possessed a considerable amount of power in the academy, so quite a lot of students desperately thought up ways to squeeze themselves into the committee. We suspect that he is involved with a crime of theft, so there is a need for us to search him and his room. Teacher Mo, you aren't thinking of covering for a criminal, are you? The green-clad young man said coldly, showing no respect to Mo Gao at all. Nonsense. Mo Gao was instantly enraged. In his heart, the sword was the most sacred existence in this world, and Ling Han had such a high talent in the art of the sword. The sword would reflect the swordsman's heart. How could such a person be a thief? Get lost. He raised his hand and pointed at them furiously, almost about to draw his sword in ire. Mo Gao, even if you're a teacher of the academy, you still have no right to cover for a criminal. The green-clad young man said, his eyes passing over Mo Gao to look into the courtyard. Get out of my way or else I will apprehend you on the basis of obstructing law enforcement. Mo Gao was so angry his whole body was shaking. He was a teacher of the academy, yet he was actually now berated and insulted by a mere student. His right hand was already lying on the hilt of his sword, a cold light shining from his eyes, ready to make his move. Teacher Mo. Ling Han walked over to them, smiled softly at Mo Gao and said, since they're here to look for me, then just let me deal with this matter. Mo Gao hesitated for a moment, but still lowered his right hand from the hilt of his sword. He would of course not simply watch as his own student was bullied by others, but he too wanted to know what was really going on here. Ling Han's eyes swept over the entourage, and a smile of realization played about his lips. In this group of over 10 people, he had recognized 2 of them to be Feng Luo and Wei Heelu. He opened his mouth to say, these 2 should not be members of the discipline committee, right? They are indeed not, for they are the ones who reported the loss, the green-clad young man said, his eyes fixed in a stare at Ling Han. Let me advise you not to have any delusions. In front of me there is no one who can conceal their crime. Chapter 111, Apprehend Him. And who are you? Ling Han cast his eyes at the green-clad young man, his gaze becoming severe. How dare you speak to me this way? Heng, you are indeed a wicked character. The green-clad young man said coldly. His eyes were sharp as swords, staring at Ling Han intensely, and a terrifying aura was circulating around his body. He was an elite of gushing spring tier, and now he was using his aura. This was a kind of domination on the spiritual level. Ling Han acted as if he felt nothing. He had just taken 7 star pills yesterday, and had greatly increased the strength of his divine sense. Anyone who intended to use his aura to dominate over him would have to be at least in spiritual ocean tier. The green-clad young man could not help feeling surprised. He had already circulated his aura, but why was there no reaction from Ling Han at all? This is Xueming, elder brother discipline. He is the team leader of Team 7 of the Discipline Committee, a young man dressed in black said, introducing the identity of the green-clad young man. Another thing, he is also one of elder brother's most faithful followers. Feng Luo added internally. Since it was such a good opportunity, he would of course make the most out of all resources available to him and deal with Ling Han once and for all. The proof was already prepared well in advance, and there was still a lackey of his elder brother playing the part of executioner. How would Ling Han be able to escape from this calamity? I'm very busy and I don't have the time to waste with you. Take me to your place, I want to search it. And Xueming said. Ling Han placed his hands behind his back and said, what right do you have to do such a thing? Are you trying to hinder the work of the discipline committee? And Xueming said darkly. He was here on Feng Luo's request, so of course he would also take Ling Han to be his enemy. There was no need for him to be polite. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, don't tell me that you people of the discipline committee just need to have a small suspicion, and you can simply rummage and search whoever's living quarters? If that's so, it seems like I have lost a bar of soap, and I suspect it was stolen by Wu Songlin, so I'll have to trouble you to search his place for it. Who? All of them choked in shock. Who was Wu Songlin? Headmaster of the Alchemy department, and a black-grade high-level alchemist. With regards to status, he was slightly higher than even the headmaster of the martial arts department, Lian Guangzhu. If they actually dared to search through his quarters, wasn't that practically hoping to die early? Ling Han really dared to say that. He even dared to make a joke about Wu Songlin. Did he not treasure his life at all? And Xue Ming's face twitched madly, feeling that this Ling Han was really a maniac. If the mocking words Ling Han had spoken about Wu Songlin had actually spread out, he would definitely be beaten to death. How could he joke so casually about a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier? Not to mention that Wu Songlin had another status in the form of the prestigious position of a black-grade high-level alchemist. You are trying to seek your own death. He spoke coldly. Since Ling Han was such an arrogant fool, there was no need for him to have any more reservations. He said, "You actually dare to insult Master Wu, apprehend him." "Oh, let me see who dares make a move." Ling Han looked at the others contemptuously, smiling slightly and said, "You people must consider carefully, and not be made use of by others. Otherwise, if you dare make a move against me, I will not be merciful at all." The others hesitated at this. Actually, aside from Xue Ming, the others did not have much of a relationship with Feng Yan. Furthermore, when they saw the absence of fear in Ling Han's expression, it seemed as if he had some powerful background. It'd be best if they distanced themselves from this matter, for if they got involved in a fight between two big bosses, minor characters like them would be easily killed. In that moment, no one dared to take another step forward. "How dare you? You not only dare to shoot your mouth off, you even dare to threaten members of the discipline committee. You are really out of control." And Xue Ming said darkly and pointed at Ling Han, "Zhonglin, apprehend him." "Yes, yes." A young man reluctantly stepped out. He naturally knew that Xue Ming was a lackey of Feng Yan, and now this matter involved Feng Luo. Then it was more than obvious that this was a clash between Feng Luo and Ling Han, or it could be considered as a clash between Feng Yan and the person standing behind Ling Han. And now he was trapped in between these two powerful parties. Whoever came out the winner of this clash, there was no benefit for him, so of course he was extremely displeased. But Xue Ming was the team leader, so unless he intended to resign from the discipline committee, he would have to obey the former's commands. "Younger brother disciple Ling Han, I advise you to surrender." Zhonglin moved into an attacking stance. He was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier while Ling Han was only in the 5th layer, so he had absolute confidence he would be able to apprehend Ling Han within 10 moves. Ling Han shook his head and said, "You still do not have the ability to apprehend me." Zhonglin could not help becoming infuriated. Indeed, he did not have much of a background, but his power of the 9th layer of element gathering tier was authentic. Otherwise, he would not have been qualified to join the discipline committee in the first place. And now a younger brother disciple with cultivation in the mere 5th layer of element gathering tier actually said that Zhonglin was not capable of apprehending the former. This doubtlessly was a blow to his pride. "Why are you still blabbering? Apprehend him now." And Xue Ming urged. "Excuse me then." Zhonglin made his move and charged towards Ling Han. Mo Gao wanted to make his move. He knew that this only student of his had an exceptionally high level of comprehension in the art of the sword, but the gap in cultivation levels was a big disadvantage. 6 flashes of sword chi would grant him an extra 3 battle stars of battle prowess at most. But that still did not matter much, as a martial artist of the 8th layer of element gathering tier would still be unable to match an opponent in the 9th layer. However, Ling Han had already stepped forward to take this attack head-on. He did not even draw his sword. Instead, he directly threw out a punch. Ping! The two of them clashed head-on, and a visible shock wave spread out from the point of contact. The two figures retreated at the same time. What? When they saw this happen, everyone's eyes widened in shock, wearing disbelieving expressions. Zhonglin was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, yet he did not manage to get the upper hand in a head-on clash? How was that possible? How could there be such a powerful martial artist of the 5th layer of element gathering tier? Are you sure you really are in the 5th layer of element gathering tier? I've underestimated you. Zhonglin instantly looked serious. Though he had no desire to become someone else's weapon, martial artists would of course have their own pride. As a martial artist in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, if he could not even apprehend an opponent in the 5th layer of element gathering tier, what would be left of his pride? He took a deep breath and formed his hands into claws. He stretched out his arms to 2 different directions, bent and raised his left leg, looking like an eagle that was stretching out its wings in preparation for flight. Eagle soaring in the sky. He gave a furious shout and his figure sped forwards, his battle prowess spiking instantly. Battle prowess and cultivation level were 2 completely different matters. From the moment he used his martial arts technique, his battle prowess had spiked up to 10 battle stars. Ling Han only smiled softly, his eyes turning serious, and suddenly, a powerful aura emanated from his figure. What? Zhong Lin could only feel his heart trembling, as if he was a little lamb that had caught the eye of a fierce tiger, and he was left with nothing but endless fear. This move, eagle soaring in the sky, suddenly lost its accuracy, and the deviation from his real target was excessively large. Ling Han nonchalantly aimed a kick at Zhong Lin's behind, and peng, the latter instantly fell onto the ground with a heavy thump, causing a large disturbance to the dust on the ground. Complete silence. In Huyang Academy, Zhong Lin could not be considered an elite, but among those of element gathering tier, his ability was enough to rank him within the top 100 martial artists of element gathering tier. Yet now, he was actually defeated by a mere martial artist in the 5th layer of element gathering tier in one move. How were they supposed to believe their eyes? What a great brat, no wonder he was so arrogant. So it seems that he does indeed have some ability. A cold light gleamed in Shueming's eyes. He stepped out and walked forwards. He had decided to make a move himself. Ling Han looked slightly serious at this. And Shueming was in the Gushing Spring tier, and if you converted his battle prowess to the level of element gathering tier, that would at least be 20 stars. Furthermore, this estimate had still not included the upgrade granted from the use of black-grade martial arts techniques. Of course, and Shueming may not possess any kind of black-grade martial arts technique. Back down? Emogo stood in front of Ling Han, his eyes wide with rage. He had not stepped in previously, but as Ling Han's teacher, he would definitely not just stand by and watch as his own student was humiliated by another. Chapter 112, Arrival of the Main Character. And Shueming hesitated slightly. No matter how much of a piece of trash Mo Gao was, he was still a teacher of the academy. How could he be so easily insulted? Against Ling Han he had a just cause on his side. Moreover, the stolen goods were already planted well in advance, so Ling Han would have no way to escape. Then, even if he used any rough movements in the process of apprehending Ling Han, so what? Who would actually defend the innocence of a person who had fallen from grace? Mo Gao, however, was a completely different matter. Teacher, allow me. Ling Han pushed Mo Gao gently to one side. And Shueming was indeed very strong, but the 2nd layer of Gushing Spring tier. He could still manage an opponent of this level. Ling Han. Mo Gao was extremely astonished. The reason why he had interfered was because he knew that Shueming would never dare do anything against him. But Ling Han did not have any trump card to protect himself. No matter how much of a monster he was, he still would not be able to match an opponent in the 2nd layer of Gushing Spring tier, right? Don't worry, teacher. Ling Han said with a smile and walked boldly forwards. Ha! I have to admit that you are indeed quite brave. And Shueming saw that his dilemma was solved without him doing anything and so could not contain his joy. Ling Han shook his head and said, You are just a lackey, what right do you have to bark? Let us see if I won't shatter your whole mouth of teeth. Insolence. And Shueming's eyes widened in rage and he was about to make his move. Being so noisy in the academy, what a scandal. A dignified voice filled with displeasure was heard. Everyone turned around to look at this newcomer, and saw that the speaker was a tall, sturdy man. The man was dressed in embroidered robes, exuding a powerful aura that caused anyone who dared to look upon him feel as if they should take a step back. The 3rd Imperial Prince, Qi Feng Yun. There was also a crimson-haired beauty following at his heels. She had a very shapely figure, and her lips were the shade of fire. However, this was the 3rd Imperial Prince's woman, who dared to look at her voluptuous bosom, or spare another look at her slightly raised behind. Greetings, 3rd Imperial Prince. Everyone fell down onto one knee to pay their salutations to this man who may one day inherit the throne. Yet Ling Han still stood as straight and upright as a spear. There was no one in this world that was qualified to make him kneel. This was the pride that belonged to the powerful warrior of heaven tier he was in his last life. Even if he had changed bodies, even if his cultivation level had dropped drastically, there was no way to change that. He would only keep his temper in check but would never break his pride. Rise. The 3rd Imperial Prince lifted his hands slightly and then asked, What's going on here? In reply to the 3rd Imperial Prince, and Shueming was cheering secretly in his heart. The violet-shaped badge was something that the 3rd Imperial Prince had gifted to a select few in the first place, and now that the main character was here, Ling Han's punishment would only be even more severe. Most importantly, when they found the violet-shaped badge among Ling Han's belongings later, Ling Han would have no way to deny it, because how could the third imperial prince not recognize his own token? And Xue Ming immediately began to recount the facts of the matter. Of course, according to him, he had received a report from Feng Luo about having lost the token, and so, following the trail of clues left behind, went on to suspect Ling Han, which was why he was here with members of the discipline committee to search Ling Han's room and arrest him for theft. When the third imperial prince finished listening to this tale, an odd expression played about his features. Others may not know, but how could he not know that he had presented Ling Han with a violet badge just the day before, so what need was there for the latter to steal another? Based on his intelligence, he very quickly came to the realization that this matter was an attempt to frame Ling Han for a crime he had not committed. Furthermore, the mastermind behind this trap was very likely Feng Luo. Feng Luo watched all this happen from one side, and when he saw the odd expression on the third imperial prince's face, he thought that the latter was angered, and so he quickly fanned the flames by saying, "Your Highness, it's all my fault. I asked for the token from my elder brother, yet did not take care of it properly, which created an opportunity for it to be stolen by a thief. Please punish me, Your Highness." He bowed his head and clasped his hands in the third imperial prince's direction, but a cold smile curled up around the corners of his lips. Even he would have to be punished because of not taking care of the third imperial prince's token properly, so what kind of punishment would a thief like Ling Han get? He who said he was stupid. He was an expert of the highest grade in this kind of crafty plans and machinations. It was only that he had no use for this kind of thing in the past, as whatever he wanted done, would be done with one word from him. The third imperial prince cast a meaningful glance at Ling Han, before turning his eyes back to Xue Ming. "So, what do you plan to do?" "I naturally plan to search Ling Han's room. We have already obtained solid proof that Your Highness's token is definitely in his room." And Xue Ming said confidently. He would of course never think that Feng Yan's brother would dupe him. The third imperial prince smiled and took a look at the other people of the discipline committee and said, "Do you all think this way?" The others all looked a bit hesitant. In truth, they were all very much confused. They had come all this way here merely because of Xue Ming's command, so they had no idea what was really going on here. But they all knew about the relation between Xue Ming and Feng Yan, so when they saw Feng Luo, they had already managed to guess a bit of what was going on. And now, with this question from the third imperial prince, they could not help but hesitate. After all, once this issue became bigger, whatever they said now would be testimonial statements. It would be extremely easy for others to take advantage of any loopholes present in their words. Being in the discipline committee was a very tempting job. There was no need for them to leave the academy to go on practical training trips, and they'd still be able to earn academic points. Thus, they were naturally envied by a lot of people. "We are not really sure." They finally decided to tell the truth. And Xue Ming instantly gave a cold humph in his heart, but this would not affect anything. As long as he managed to find the violet badge in Ling Han's room, he'd be able to firmly nail this crime on Ling Han's head. He said, "Your Highness, this person has continued to put up a stiff resistance against our authority. Please wait while I apprehend him." "Wait," Ling Han said and smiled. "Do not speak before you think. A good, well-disciplined student like myself is of course most ready to cooperate with the academy. It's just that I don't like the look of you. But since the third imperial prince is here, then fine, let's go and search my room." And Xue Ming was surprised. He never thought that Ling Han would simply submit like this. "I have not committed any crime, so my conscience is clear," Ling Han said. And Xue Ming instantly understood, though he secretly laughed at Ling Han's naivete. This was not something that could be simply solved just because you were innocent. This was fine. When he was caught red-handed, there would be no way for the brat to deny the accusation. The lightest punishment would be being expelled from the academy, or in the best-case scenario, perhaps the third imperial prince would act personally to deal with him. "Just go die, idiot." Ling Han advanced without fear while the others followed behind him. Even the third imperial prince was no exception to this. If anyone who did not know what was going on saw this, they'd think that Ling Han was the commander of this big group of people. And Xue Ming very soon realized this and quickly shot to walk in front of Ling Han, looking at him furiously. Ling Han smiled softly and said, "What are you glaring for? Something wrong with your eyes? Plus, why does a mere commoner like you dare to walk in front of the third imperial prince? Are you intending to commit treason?" Damn, what a serious accusation. And Shui Ming felt as if he was about to pass out. He only had not wanted to let Ling Han look so awesome, but why was he suddenly smashed with such a large accusation? He secretly shot a glance at the third Imperial Prince and saw that the latter's expression was indeed a bit dark, causing him to feel even more dizzy. He hurriedly asked, "Didn't you also walk in front just now?" "Nonsense, I'm bringing you all to my room. If I don't walk in front, am I supposed to walk at the back? Has your head been kicked by a mule?" Ling Han mocked mercilessly. Cold sweat appeared on Shui Ming's forehead. "Surnamed in, what is your intention? Disrespecting the third Imperial Prince is considered high treason." Ling Han said calmly, yet only made things worse. "Do not slander me." And Shui Ming never thought that a subconscious action of his would allow Ling Han to dig out such a huge problem for him. He hurriedly began to explain, really afraid that this moment of carelessness would be firmly taken grasp of as a weakness of his and used to attack him. "Enough, since Ling Han told you to search, why are you all not searching yet?" the third Imperial Prince said, his face filled with impatience. "Understood." And Shui Ming exhaled a relieved breath. Looks like the third Imperial Prince did not intend to pursue the matter about his unintended disrespectful action. Chapter 113, Idiot. Start the search. And Shui Ming turned around and pointed, his confidence returned. "Wait." Ling Han called. "What is it? Do you have something on your conscience? Finally afraid now?" And Shui Ming smiled coldly. Ling Han pushed the door open and called out, "Hunyo." Xiao, a tiny figure pounced forward and leaped into Ling Han's arms. Was Hunyo. The little girl lacked patience, so Ling Han had told her to play by herself in the room while he went to pay a visit to Imo Gao. For Hunyo, who had a very strong sense of territory, these people who had intruded her territory were simply challenging her to battle. The little girl would not care whether she would be able to defeat them or not. She would definitely pounce on these intruders, her little claws out and little mouth open to take a bite of these trespassers. "All right, go ahead," Ling Han said with a smile. And Shui Ming could not help but cast a suspicious look at Hunyo. He was worried that Hunyo had hidden the stolen goods on her body, but when he thought further about it, there was no opportunity for Ling Han to communicate with Hunyo. He didn't even know what the stolen goods were, so there should not be any possibility of this happening. "Search," he said to the other members of the discipline committee. "Understood," the others replied, and like a wave they poured into the courtyard. Ling Han waited outside with Hunyo in his arms. The third Imperial Prince, the crimson-haired beauty Imo Gao, Feng Luo, and Wei He Lu waited outside. They were not members of the discipline committee, so of course they could not simply barge into the living quarters of a student. The sound of trunks and boxes being overturned was heard from within. Ling Han simply carried a chair out of the courtyard and sat down, Hunyo still in his embrace. When the crimson-haired beauty saw this, she too carried a chair out of the courtyard, and invited the third Imperial Prince to take a seat. Feng Luo would of course not be willing to simply stand. "If you are all seated and I'm still standing, then wouldn't that mean that I would look like your servant?" "Halt." He had just raised his foot, and his advance was stopped by Ling Han's shout, "I do not allow dogs to enter into my courtyard." "Wah what?" Feng Luo instantly jumped up. "You dare to call me a dog? You've already been stepped on by me quite a few times, yet why do you still not understand your own status?" Ling Han shook his head and sighed. "Having been entangled too many times with a minor character like you would not be to my taste. There's nothing interesting in stepping on you, but if it was your brother, then there might still be a bit of a sense of achievement in that." This was not him trying to exaggerate. When he had still been a powerful warrior of heaven tier, anyone who was qualified to be stepped on by him would have to at least be a powerful warrior in deity transformation tier. Ling Han. Feng Luo spat out his name in 2 breaths, his eyes so filled with fury that it looked like they were about to spit out flames. He pointed at Ling Han and said, "You can be as stubborn as you like now, but later, you will definitely die." A smile turned up the corners of his lips and Ling Han said, "I'm also bored of looking at this face of yours. It's best if you get lost from Huyang Academy." "We found it." Right at this moment, a gasp of shock was heard from within the courtyard, and a few moments later, Shui Ming and the others marched out. The one in the lead was Shui Ming, and he was holding a badge while a cold smile appeared on his face. "Ling Han, what else do you have to say now?" And Shui Ming held the badge forwards. "This is not mine," Ling Han said nonchalantly after casting a look at the item. Of course it isn't. Feng Luo interrupted. This is a gift from the third Imperial Prince to my brother. I suddenly discovered it was missing a few days ago, so it was indeed you who has stolen it. Ling Han erupted in laughter and said, let me say that your intelligence is a bit low. You have to know, I have only arrived at the Imperial City the day before yesterday. Even if you want to frame me, you would still have to get your facts straight. Feng Luo stared blankly at this. He had never imagined that Ling Han had just arrived at the Imperial City and would already coincidentally bump into him on the first night he was at the Imperial City. He quickly argued and said, I must have remembered wrongly. I should have discovered it missing yesterday or the day before yesterday. Ling Han was filled with admiration and said, there is indeed something wrong with your brain, you don't even remember when you have lost it. Additionally, this team leader of the discipline committee, you are indeed quite skilled. In such a short period of time, you managed to narrow down all your suspicion to me? Hang, you're now caught red-handed. Whatever you say now is merely you trying to escape the just punishment. And Xue Ming knew very well that the longer they spoke, the more gaps there would be revealed in their accusations. He only had to firmly hold on to the truth, that Ling Han was a thief, and that would be enough. There's a problem, Ling Han said with a smile. I would like to ask, why would I steal this thing? Feng Luo obviously knew that Ling Han would ask this, so he laughed and immediately replied, this is a token of the third Imperial Prince, and anyone who has it in their possession would be considered a friend of the third Imperial Prince. This is something that everyone in the Imperial City desired to possess. These words were indeed quite clever. These words firmly made Ling Han's crime solid, and also flattered the third Imperial Prince at the same time. Ling Han, what else do you have to say now? And Xue Ming said, smiling coldly. Ling Han said calmly, I don't have anything else to say, but I have something that I would like to show to the third Imperial Prince. Oh, and what might that be? The third Imperial Prince asked very cooperatively. Here, this is what I wanted to show you. Ling Han took out his own violet badge. What? Everyone's eyes were immediately fixed on that tiny badge. Even if the majority of them had only heard about the rumors, but no matter how they looked at it, it seemed as if these two badges were exactly the same. You actually stole another badge. Feng Luo stuttered. He was really telling the truth. He really only had one badge in his possession. Fuck. Some of them had already come to realize the truth of the matter, and they turned to look at Feng Luo as if they were looking at an idiot. From the beginning to the end, Ling Han had behaved much too calmly. They had thought that he had been so reckless because he was arrogant, but now when they thought about it again, his behavior was obviously him having a card up his sleeve. Oh, this was the gift that I had presented to Brother Ling yesterday. The third Imperial Prince smiled as well. An intelligent person like himself would of course know what to do to cooperate with Ling Han's plans. There was absolutely no need to communicate anything to him beforehand. Damn. Everyone in the area felt an irrepressible urge to begin cursing. Are the two of you taking us for monkeys to be played with? Ling Han weighed the token in his hand and said, I really never thought that your highness would be so generous. I heard that the holder of this thing would be able to eat for free in any restaurant of the Imperial City? The third Imperial Prince could not help a twitch from appearing about his mouth. Could it be that this was the only thing Ling Han liked about his token? He, the one and only third Imperial Prince, was only worth so much? If Ling Han was anyone else he would have been furious. But when he had returned to visit Fu Yuansheng later, he managed to sense from Fu Yuansheng's tone that this Grandmaster Alchemist was filled with utter respect for Ling Han. Who was Fu Yuansheng? He was definitely counted among the most powerful people of Rain Country, and furthermore he was definitely ranked within the first few. He was only an Imperial Prince now, but even if he inherited the throne in future, he would never dare to attempt anything against Fu Yuansheng. A person that even Fu Yuansheng respected. If he dared to be careless or disregard him, then wasn't that practically forcing Fu Yuansheng to treat him as his foe? He was not the only son of the Rain Emperor with grand ambitions. How fierce was the competition for the throne? It'd be fine if he could not obtain Fu Yuansheng's support, but if an action of his actually forced the latter to join the camp of his rival, that would be too stupid of him. Haha, I can be considered as half the host in this place, so of course I need to be responsible for the meals of my guests, he said with a laugh and diffused this awkward topic easily. Ling Han smiled widely and said, I hope the third Imperial Prince would not regret this in future. How could that be possible? The third Imperial Prince shook his head resolutely. He could never imagine how ugly his expression would be when he went to settle his tab the following month. Although the third Imperial Prince had agreed to hold Shueming back for Ling Han, how could the Imperial Prince really make a move himself? Your Highness, this is the Huyang Academy, so I would like to plead with Your Highness to please not make things difficult for me. And Shueming said to the third Imperial Prince with gritted teeth. Who do you think you are? So what if we make things difficult for you? The crimson-haired beauty shouted in reprimand. Her hands moved and she withdrew 2 daggers from her waist. The daggers gleamed blue as if they were made of crystal, yet a coldness that struck fear into one's heart seemed to emanate from these 2 blades. The third Imperial Prince did not say a word. Obviously he was aware of his own status, and disdained to argue with Shueming. Ling Han did not bother about them, and simply continued to advance towards Feng Luo. Don't come near me. Don't come near me. Although there were over 10 people here, Feng Luo did not feel any sense of safety. He continued to step back and turned around in preparation to flee. Ling Han shot forward and caught up with him, then grabbed onto Feng Luo's shirt. He pulled his arm back and peng, Feng Luo had fallen onto the ground. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, People say that once wounds recover, the pain is forgotten. You, on the other hand, have just had your whole mouth of teeth shattered just the day before yesterday, and now actually dare to once again trifle with me? Do you really not know how the word, dead, is written? Ling Han, don't you dare go too far, my brother is Feng Yan. Feng Luo said loudly. He was only left with this one trump card to play. I know. You've already said this a lot of times. Ling Han said with a smile. Pa! And his foot had kicked out and struck Feng Luo. Peng 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 peng. He gave Feng Luo a heavy thrashing. After he was done, he finally took a step back, Hunyo still in his hold, and said, Tell the complete truth about your attempts to set me up. Nonsense, I did not set you up. Feng Luo groaned. He still had this little bit of intelligence. If he admitted publicly that he had set Ling Han up in front of all these people, then the lightest punishment he would get would be expulsion from the academy. Let's see how long you can maintain your stubbornness. Ling Han invited Hunyo to join him, and together, the 2 of them thrashed Feng Luo enthusiastically. Everyone around them sucked on their teeth in secret. There were more than 10 members of the discipline committee here, plus a teacher and the third Imperial Prince. Yet Ling Han actually dared to thrash Feng Luo in front of so many people. He was indeed extremely brave. Really arrogant. Really awesome. Feng Luo was not a person with indomitable will. Very soon he could no longer endure being pummeled, and recounted how he had planned to set Ling Han up. He had even revealed Shueming's part in his plans, completely betraying his teammate. Hearing him reveal the truth, Shueming and Wei He Lu paled, wanting nothing more than to bite the fool to death. Hang. The third Imperial Prince immediately put on a severe expression and said, Shueming, as a team leader of the discipline committee, you actually dare to break the rules. Though I am not a member of the discipline committee, but as an Imperial Prince of Rain Country, I will suggest to the Academy to give you a severe punishment. No. And Shueming was filled with fear and horror at this, almost going into an emotional breakdown. You all have heard Feng Luo's confession, right? The third Imperial Prince cast a severe look at the other members of the discipline committee, and with no exception, everyone nodded. Are you kidding? Feng Yan was merely a true disciple, while the third Imperial Prince was a core disciple. Merely comparing these 2 different statuses was enough for them to know which side to choose. Moreover, one of them was an Imperial Prince who had a chance of inheriting the throne in the future, who would dare oppose his words. No, I have nothing to do with this, it was all Feng Luo's commands. Wei He Lu said, trembling in fear. He really felt very wronged in this. He stood up for Feng Luo the day before yesterday, and the result was being expelled from the alchemy department by Wu Songlin, and now he tried to set up Ling Han under Feng Luo's command. The result would likely be even more horrible. Why was he so unfortunate? Whatever you have to say it when you are at the discipline committee. The third Imperial Prince gave a wave of his hand and said, Take them away. Understood. The other members of the discipline committee coldly did as he said. At the end of the day, this Huyang Academy was established by the imperial family, and the third imperial prince could definitely be considered as half their master, who dared to disobey his commands. Feng Luo and the other two were completely pale as they were escorted away by the discipline committee. Chapter 115, Big News. Team 7 of the discipline committee had a few female members, and before they left, they all cast tender gazes at Ling Han. For them, Ling Han was definitely a great material for a husband, someone who could even command around the third imperial prince. How many such people were there in the whole of the Rain country? If they could actually manage to score this kind of Prince Charming, then it would have completely been worth living in this world. Brother Ling, I had never imagined that you have such high accomplishments in the field of alchemy that even Grandmaster Fu is filled with utter respect for you. The third imperial prince said to Ling Han with a smile after everyone else had departed. The reason why he had chased after Ling Han and had even presented the latter with his own personal token was because he had noticed that Fu Yuanxing valued Ling Han greatly, but the truth was he had completely no idea who Ling Han was. But when he went back to visit Fu Yuanxing again, he attempted to ask about Ling Han in a roundabout manner. Though Fu Yuanxing did not exactly reveal anything solid, the few words that he had spoken gave birth to great shock in the third imperial prince's heart. Thus, even though only one night had passed, he had immediately come to pay Ling Han a visit. For someone like him whose ambition was to one day inherit the throne and become the emperor, Ling Han was too valuable an asset. Actually, he did not yet know that Wu Songlin himself was also completely subdued by Ling Han's superiority in alchemy. If he did, he would definitely be even more astonished and place even greater importance on maintaining a good relationship with Ling Han. Ling Han only smiled softly. The imperial prince of a mere small country would naturally not be taken too seriously by him. However, he was indeed not very strong currently, so he would not mind borrowing the power of this imperial prince. At most, he would repay this favor by helping this third imperial prince climb onto the throne in the future. A person like the third imperial prince was of course a good conversationalist and an expert at manipulating the atmosphere, so their conversation continued in a relaxed and easy mood. When their conversation ended, the third imperial prince excused himself and departed. Personal relationships would of course not be established and strengthened in a single day. When it was noon, Wu Songlin arrived and delivered 10 monetary notes, each 1,000,000 silver coins in value. Thank you, young Master Han. Wu Songling wore an expression filled with absolute gratitude. If anyone who did not know the whole story saw this, they'd definitely be confused, wondering secretly whether Wu Songlin had gone crazy. What person would deliver money to another and even thank them? But for Wu Songlin, that major origin spirit replenishing technique could never be valued with mere money. Even if Ling Han had asked for 100 million or 1 billion, he would still think of some way to collect the money. Ling Han gracefully accepted the money. He was indeed lacking funds right now, and furthermore the major origin spirit replenishing technique was indeed worth this amount. Moreover, money was only important when his cultivation level was low, but by the time he reached flower blossom tier, who would still use such worldly stuff? However, money was still very useful to him now, so Ling Han smiled in satisfaction. When Wu Songlin saw this, he immediately took advantage of the opportunity to ask Ling Han for guidance. Ling Han simply gave him a bit of guidance. Being able to become a black-grade high-level alchemist, Wu Songlin was indeed quite talented. There were a lot of problems that only required a few pointers from Ling Han, and he would be able to understand the theory behind them. Otherwise, Ling Han would really not have the patience to teach him. Wu Songlin had just barely left, and Lu Yutong had brought Ling Zixin over. Ling Han did not bother to venture out of the academy to eat, and decided to simply use whatever ingredients he had on hand to prepare lunch. Because there was an extreme glutton present, the amount they prepared was terrifyingly excessive. If anyone who did not know the true reason saw this, they would think that they were preparing a celebratory feast. I'm sorry, Lu Yutong said all of a sudden. Why are you apologizing so suddenly? Ling Han asked nonchalantly, not thinking too deeply about why Lu Yutong was apologizing. That Qin Yunxiang has a bit of a background, and I haven't managed to deal with him. Who? Ling Han turned to her and asked. Lu Yutong could not help but press a hand to her forehead and said, You are really quite forgetful. Could it be that you've forgotten that an old guy attempted to snatch Xian Xian and Hunyo away just the day before yesterday? Oh. Ling Han finally remembered who Qin Yunxiang was. He had not taken this kind of minor character to heart in the first place, and Lu Yutong had also declared that she would handle the issue, so he had of course completely put this old lecher out of his mind. He had never thought that even with the power of the Lu clan, there was still no way to deal with him. Qin Yunxiang has a daughter who is Sun Ziyan's concubine, Lu Yutong explained. Sun Ziyan? Ling Han could not help laughing at this. How could anyone name their child that? Weren't they afraid that the child would be addressed by others as Sun Zi in the future? The Sun clan is one of the 8 great clans of the imperial city, and Sun Ziyan is the most outstanding member of their younger generation. He should be about 25 years old this year, and has just broken through to Gushing Spring tier, so he is very much valued by the Sun clan, Lu Yutong explained. And so, the Lu clan does not wish to make an enemy out of the Sun clan, and thus will not continue pursuing the matter? Ling Han asked. Lu Yutong sighed and said, Indeed. Sun Ziyin dotes very much on Qin Yunxiang's daughter. My clan had just made a move on the Qin clan, and Qin Yunxiang immediately went to seek the help of the Sun clan. Sun Ziyin stepped forward personally and bailed Qin Yunxiang out. Ling Han gave an "oh" at this. No wonder Qin Yunxiang dared to collaborate with the Earth and Water faction to kidnap young girls in broad daylight. So it was not just that he was outrageously bold because of his lust, he also had a Sun clan to support him. Even if anything actually happened, there would be someone to cover for him. Since the Lu clan can do nothing to him, then I shall act personally, Ling Han said. In any case, Qin Yunxiang in his eyes was no different than a flea. One stomp from him and he's dead. Lu Yutong looked very ashamed. She had promised that she would handle the issue, yet in the end, did not manage to fulfill her promise. Haha, don't look so down, you're a great beauty. Come, give me a smile. Ling Han said with a laugh. Snicker. Lu Yutong did not smile, but Hunyo did. She had currently stuffed her mouth full of meat, and this smile of hers did not even reveal any sign of her teeth. Puchi, when Lu Yutong and Ling Zixian saw her smile, they both broke into laughter. Are you eating? A melodious, gentle voice was heard. A pretty figure walked in. The figure was an extremely beautiful girl. Li Si-chan. Lu Yutong was very surprised. She never thought that she would see Li Si-chan appear here. Lu Yutong. Li Si-chan was also slightly shocked. The princess of the Lu clan actually deigned to eat with Ling Han? If this spread around, most likely no one would believe it. Who in the academy did not know that Lu Yutong was a well-known icy beauty? It was really impossible to imagine that she would behave so intimately with a man. Oh, so you know each other. That's good, then I don't have to introduce you, Ling Han said with a smile. Lu Yutong looked at Li Si-chan, and Li Si-chan looked at Lu Yutong. Combative flames flickered in the eyes of these two extraordinarily beautiful girls. Though they were collectively known as the Twin Pearls, in actual fact they did not interact much with each other. It was only that the both of them were too beautiful, as well as that one was extremely talented in martial arts while the other was very accomplished in alchemy, that they were collectively known as the Twin Pearls. They were both clever girls, and seeing the other appear at Ling Han's courtyard, what did that signify? For some reason, a slightly sour feeling appeared in their hearts. Have you eaten? Ling Han asked Li Si-chan. No. Li Si-chan had already eaten, but just as she was about to say that, she changed her mind. Then come join us for a meal, Ling Han invited with a smile. Li Si-chan accepted the invitation without any reservations. She took a pair of chopsticks and a bowl and slowly began to eat. Oh, right, were you looking for me for something? Ling Han asked. Oh, I came here especially to inform you that a small earthquake happened a few days ago, and an underground river was revealed because of it. Moreover, there actually appeared ancient spirit tools that floated out with the river's flow. Li Si-chan revealed a very big piece of news. Chapter 116. A lot of spirit tools. What? Lu Yutong immediately jumped to her feet. Something like that actually happened? Spirit tools could only be created by powerful warriors in spiritual ocean or higher tiers. They would have to use their own energy to cultivate these tools, and after a long period of time, their respective cultivation techniques would be engraved on the tools using a unique method. These tools would then have power about equal to their maker. It may seem like the creation of a spirit tool was a simple process, but there was a limit to the lifespan of a martial artist. To be able to successfully create and perfect a spirit tool would require at least 20 to 30 years. Moreover, spirit tools had very specific, very high requirements regarding the materials that could be used to forge them. As a result, there really were very few spirit tools in existence. Of course, this was the situation in a small place like Rain Country. In Ling Han's last life, what warrior would not have a few spirit tools by their side? Some people who had specifically put their focus on the path of tools would have a few dozen or even a few hundred tools, and in battle they would use all these spirit tools, and that was indeed a very awesome display. But in Rain Country, the most likely to appear were the raw materials for spirit tools. How could there appear so many completed spirit tools? And now, a lot of spirit tools actually appeared floating in waters of an underground river. What kind of unbelievable idea was that? Ling Han did not have much interest in this. His target was returning to Heaven Tier. With incredible, unbeatable battle prowess on his side, what spirit tool could he not obtain? Moreover, that black tower standing proudly within his dantian was definitely a spirit tool as well, and most likely, it was of an inestimable grade too. After all, he had been in Heaven Tier in the past, so no matter how weak his actual ability was, he had been uncountable times stronger than Deity Transformation Tier, yet a tremor produced by the Black Tower still obliterated him easily. And now he need only concentrate on breaking through to Gushing Spring Tier, and then he'd be able to enter the Black Tower and could perhaps discover the secrets hidden behind it. He may even be able to control the Black Tower. Since that was the case, what use was there for him to expend extra effort to work hard for the sake of obtaining other spirit tools? How can you still be so calm? Li Si-chan looked at Ling Han strangely. When she first heard this news, she had also lost all composure like Lu Yutong, but what about Ling Han? He was acting as if he hadn't heard anything at all. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "Just a couple of spirit tools, what's so rare about that?" "A couple of spirit tools?" Li Si-chan gave a hiss. This guy really liked to talk big. They were talking about spirit tools here, and for minor martial artists like themselves, if they could get their hands on a spirit tool, then even if it would not signify a complete rebirth, their battle prowess could definitely increase by 3 battle stars or even 5. And that wasn't awesome enough. She tilted her head and fixed her eyes on Ling Han. She suspected that the guy was only pretending, but Ling Han continued looking completely serene, causing her to feel disappointed. "Why did I not hear of this news?" Lu Yutong asked curiously. This was too inconceivable. She was the strongest member of the younger generation of the Lu clan. Logically, if even Li Si-chan knew of this, then it was impossible that her clan would not inform her of this. Li Si-chan deliberately sighed and cast a pitying gaze at her. Lu Yutong could not help feeling flustered with this sigh from Li Si-chan, and began to doubt her value in the eyes of her own clan. Yet Ling Han only smiled and said, "Yutong, you need not be sad. This girl knows because Wu Songlin wants to do me a favor, and so sent her to inform me." There suddenly appeared a lot of spirit tools floating out through an underground river. This kind of news would definitely be strictly controlled, and only high-ranking individuals would have the privilege to go. He paused and continued, "There may be an ancient historical site at the source of the underground river, and passage of time may have caused a certain change in the site, causing the spirit tools from within to float out with the underground river. The higher ranks most likely are intending to open up this ancient historical site, but there may be unforeseen dangers within this historical site, so of course they would not be taking members of the younger generation like you girls to venture into this likely dangerous site." Li Si-chan stared at him in dumb shock, and after a while she finally said, "Are you really a 17-year-old young man? You said the exact same thing as my master." Ling Han laughed and said, "I've actually lived for over 200 years. These words instantly caused these two girls to roll their eyes. Who would believe such a thing? Ling Han gave a sigh. Even when he was telling the truth, it would be completely taken as a joke by others. This caused him to feel very hurt. Since that is the case, why would Headmaster Wu inform us? Lu Yutong very consciously put herself and Ling Han together. A faint displeasure arose in Li Si-chan's heart, and she immediately emphasized, "Master wanted me to inform Ling Han alone." This time Lu Yutong did not look angry. She only gave a slightly meaningful smile. The displeasure in Li Si-chan's heart increased a bit, and she turned back round and said, "Master said that these spirit tools seem to have their own consciousness, and there is no way for anyone to get their hands on them. After they appeared floating on the underground river, it would be fine if they were not disturbed. But if they were disturbed, they would immediately zoom up into the sky and disappear." Ling Han suddenly stood up, a solemn expression on his face. There were two kinds of spirit tools. One was the ordinary type, which was a spirit tool created by a martial artist engraving their martial intent on the spirit tool, as if they were putting their own stamp on it. As long as you managed to activate it, then it would be a very powerful weapon. But no matter what, it was still only a weapon, an inanimate object. This kind of spirit tool's power would slowly deteriorate with the passage of time, and the martial intent engraved on it would also slowly disappear before the spirit tool would finally degrade into a normal weapon or tool. This was very normal. A martial artist needed to absorb spiritual chi to replenish their energy, and once a spirit tool left the hands of this powerful warrior and was used by a weaker person, the energy expended would be less than the energy inserted. Thus, naturally the power contained within the spirit tool would slowly be exhausted. But there was another type of spirit tools, the ones produced with certain unique materials. In the process of becoming spirit tools, they would develop their own consciousness, their own spirits. Spirit tools that had their own spirit were able to absorb spiritual chi on their own to replenish their energy, like how a martial artist cultivated. And no matter how much time passed, their power would not diminish in the slightest. To forge this type of spirit tools, it'd require indescribably valuable and priceless materials. Rain country. Perhaps there may appear some of those extremely rare materials here, but there was absolutely no one with the ability to forge such spirit tools. Even if powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal or spiritual infantry all blasted full power attacks at these materials, there wouldn't even be a scratch on them, so how could they be forged into weapons? Moreover, there was an even higher requirement on the martial artist's cultivation level to be able to cultivate such spirit tools. The minimum requirement was at least deity transformation tier. Thinking this, how could Ling Han not be shocked? There actually appeared so many level 8 or even level 9 spirit tools, simply floating out with an underground river dam. Even in his last life, there were only 7 powerful warriors of heaven tier. Ling Han was instantly interested and said, "Where is that underground river?" "Che, I thought you considered yourself above such worldly matters, but you're still interested, aren't you?" Pretending to be mature, Li Si-chan mumbled. "Stop blabbering, where is it?" Lu Yutong instantly asked in a reprimanding tone, having no fondness for Li Si-chan at all. "Apologies, master told me to tell Ling Han only," Li Si-chan countered, not showing any weakness. "Ha, I am Ling Han's attendant. Whatever you want to tell my master, you must first tell me," Lu Yutong said a bit proudly. "What?" Li Si-chan was astonished, casting a gaze filled with disbelief at Lu Yutong. Lu Yutong was the princess of the Lu clan. She had so many admirers they could queue up in a line and surround the whole imperial city a few times, and now she had actually become Ling Han's attendant? But when she thought about it, even her master Wusong Lin addressed Ling Han as young Master Han, so the princess of the Lu clan did not seem that much of a VIP when compared with him. Moreover, just take a look at this girl's expression. She was obviously showing off. Li Si-chan really felt that she was going to be driven mad by frustration. Chapter 117, No Loyalty. "All right, we're all friends here, so stop fighting." Ling Han stepped out as the mediator. He now had a deep interest in that underground river, so of course he would not want these two girls to waste too much time on such pointless matters. "Who's friends with her?" Both girls said the same words at the same time, and when they realized it, they again exclaimed in unison, "Don't copy what I say." Ha 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 ha. Ling Zixian instantly broke out into giggles. Hunyou began to laugh too, though she did not know just what was so funny. She only wanted to join in the fun. "Everyone's done eating, right? If everyone's done, then let's go." Ling Han stood up from his seat. No. Hunyou hurriedly exclaimed in a muffled voice. The little girl had a very strong learning ability, and she was learning more and more new words every single day. Ling Han considered it for a moment, then said, "Yutong, you stay here to take care of these two girls." Lu Yutong quickly shook her head and said, "I want to help you." She was in gushing spring tier, so she would be able to help Ling Han. Ling Han felt a little awkward. This trip would not possibly take just one day, so who should he ask to take care of the two girls? Ling Zixian was still okay, but Hunyou was practically a man-eating little tiger. No matter whom he asked to take care of her, Ling Han would still worry. But it was very likely that unforeseen and unexpected dangers would emerge within that ancient historical site, so there was no way he could take these two girls along. "Then I'll just ask Wusong Lin to take care of them," Ling Han decided after a moment's consideration. Li Si-chan instantly rolled her eyes. Her master was a black-grade high-level alchemist and was also the headmaster of the alchemy department, and now he had actually been degraded to becoming a babysitter. She didn't know if her master wouldn't actually pass out when he heard this. Yet Ling Han found this to be a good idea, because Hunyeo was definitely not a well-behaved child. So, in case she made any trouble with Wu Songlin's rank, he'd be able to easily smooth things over. Thus, when Hunyeo had eaten her fill, he brought the two little girls along with Li Si-chan over to Wu Songlin's place. This time, Wu Songlin just so happened to be at home, and when he saw Ling Han, he immediately came out to receive him, as if he was the latter's disciple. When Ling Han told him of his intention to have the two little girls stay over with him, the old man of course agreed immediately, and in passing, asked Ling Han about some parts of the major origin spirit replenishing technique. After all, this cultivation technique was completely one of a kind in the current era, so the old man naturally had a lot of parts that he could not fully understand. Ling Han lectured him patiently, and also asked a bit about the underground river before leaving with Li Si-chan. After leaving Wu Songlin's courtyard, the two of them had not traveled too far when they saw a young man approaching them. He looked to be about 24 or 25 years old, quite good-looking, but his whole face had an air of a ruffian about it. He had even left the front lapels of his robes open, as if he was afraid that others could not tell he was a delinquent. Li Si-chan's eyes sharpened, and a displeased expression immediately appeared on her face. From the looks of it, she recognized this fellow, but he was apparently not someone she enjoyed the company of. Si-chan. The young man also saw Li Si-chan, and pleasure immediately bloomed upon his face. He instantly walked quickly towards them, and looked like he was going to grab onto her hand, leering at her in desire. Li Si-chan stepped to one side and dodged his attempt. Her brow wrinkled into a frown and she said, "Wu Zhongyi, be more respectful. Moreover, I've already reminded you many times, you need to address me as aunt." "Damn woman." The young man by the name of Wu Zhongyi mumbled, and a cold smirk appeared on his face as he said, "Do you intend to forget your debts? Don't forget, if my grandfather had not taken you in as a disciple, you'd have long since had your pants removed and be raped to death." "You dash," Li Si-chan's face paled in an instant. The young man's words were much too vulgar, causing her petite figure to tremble as she almost spat out blood in her fury. "Did I speak wrongly?" Wu Zhongyi gave a humph. "You should have heard rumors about the character of that brat from the He clan. He doesn't only like to torture beautiful girls, he also likes to do it in public. If it was not for my grandfather protecting you, you'd be played with until there was nothing left. And now you think your wings are fully grown so you intend to forget your debts?" As Ling Han listened to this, he quickly understood the inner workings of this issue. This Wu Zhongyi was the grandson of Wu Songlin, and had a crush on Li Si-chan, but Li Si-chan did not like him at all. Sometimes being too beautiful was not a good thing. From this aspect, Lu Yutong was much more fortunate. As the princess of the Lu clan, who dared to covet her so openly. "I will of course repay my debt of gratitude to master," Li Si-chan said through gritted teeth. "Fine, you repay the debt then," Wu Zhongyi said with a perverted grin. "My parents also feel that we are a very good match. Why don't we just marry tomorrow? My parents would definitely be very pleased." Hey. You obviously look like a pig, what kind of strange thoughts are you having?" Ling Han took a step forward and placed himself in front of Li Si-chan. "Your name's not good either. Wu Zhongyi, no loyalty just from the name itself I can tell you're scum." "And who are you?" Wu Zhongyi stared blankly. "Pa." Ling Han's hand rose and fell quickly, giving him a slap. He slowly withdrew his hand and said calmly, "The thing I dislike the most is people cursing in front of me." Wu Zhongyi only felt very aggrieved. "Weren't you the one who called me a pig in the first place?" "Oh, I was not cursing you just now, just telling the truth. Tell me, which part of you do you think does not resemble a pig?" Ling Han explained. He was still a very polite, well-mannered person. "You're still calling me a pig?" Wu Zhongyi instantly jumped up and pointing at Ling Han's nose exclaimed, "How dare you? You not only curse at me, you even dared to hit me?" "Pa." Ling Han once again gave him a slap, causing Wu Zhongyi to spin around on the same spot for 4 times before directly falling down and sitting on the ground. He waved his hand a bit and said, "I also dislike others pointing at me. Don't you know that this is a very impolite and a very rude thing to do?" "So hitting people was something very polite and very well-mannered then?" Wu Zhongyi mocked in his heart, but he dared not speak these words out loud. He crawled to his feet and finally stood, pointing at Li Si-chan, and said, "You ungrateful b*********. You actually gang up with an outsider to bully me? I'll show you. One day you will definitely marry me, and let's see if I won't ***********. These words caused Li Si-chan's pretty face to become a few shades paler. Even Ling Han could no longer bear to listen to this vulgarity. He picked up a rock from the ground and slammed it onto Wu Zhongyi. Aya! Wu Zhongyi gave a miserable yell, and fell directly onto the ground, no longer moving. Li Si-chan's expression quickly changed and she said, "You didn't kill him, right?" It was true that she did not like this person, but Wu Zhongyi was Wu Songlin's only grandson. If he died, then that would mean that the Wu clan would end in this generation. It's all right, I know my own strength. At most, he'd be bedridden for about 10+ days and have a few problems with his memory. For example, he may not remember things that happened in these few days or maybe these few months, Ling Han said, not very certain himself. Li Si-chan rolled her eyes. And this was light for him? But Ling Han had acted because of her, so she was still quite touched. Don't bother with him. There's quite a lot of people passing through here and soon he'd be discovered. Ling Han took hold of Li Si-chan's hand and pulled her away. That Wu Zhongyi was indeed a detestable character, so he would naturally not mind having the former lie here and rest for a while longer. Li Si-chan could not resist Ling Han, who was stronger than her, so she could only submit herself to being pulled along by him. When they returned to Ling Han's place, Lu Yutong saw that the two were walking hand in hand, and a spark of killing intent appeared on her beautiful face. Chapter 118, Blood-Gushing Mountain. Ling Han laughed and released Li Si-chan's hand before saying, "Have you finished packing?" Just now, he and Li Si-chan were in charge of sending the two little girls over, while Lu Yutong was in charge of packing their stuff. "I've finished," Lu Yutong said with a nod. The gaze she directed at Li Si-chan was not very friendly, as she pondered whether or not she should secretly kill off the girl in the wilds. "Then let's go." Ling Han seemed to be filled with anticipation. What actually lay underneath the underground river that high-level spirit tools would flow out from it? They went on their way, left the academy and traveled out of the imperial city, heading towards the blood-gushing mountain that was about 2,000 miles away. The mountain was named thus because every so often, the rivers and streams that surged from the mountain would be dyed red, as if it was blood flowing in the rivers, not water. Because the journey was quite long, all three of them rented horses. Otherwise they would have to spend quite a few days merely on the journey itself. "I am an orphan, and it was only when I was found out to have remarkable talent in alchemy that I gradually left poverty, but it is not entirely a good thing when a woman is born too beautiful. As I grew older, I became the target of desire of more and more people." On the journey there, Li Si-chan began to reveal her circumstances. "Unlike Miss Lu, who has a powerful clan behind her to protect her, I could only try my best to keep a low profile and hide. However, I may be able to hide for a moment but could never hide for my whole life. In the end, I became the target of the 7th young master of the He clan. But thankfully, I encountered my master at that time and he took me in as a disciple, allowing me to escape from a tragic fate." This was indeed a very pitiful story, but Lu Yutong was extremely displeased for she was used for comparison. You just see how pitiful the other was. Sigh, beautiful women suffer unhappy fates, how easy was it to incur the sympathy of men? And her? From birth, she was the princess of the Lu clan, enjoying all the luxuries and wealth granted to her identity. Damn this scheming woman. During the journey they would travel by day and take rest at night, and with the company of the two girls, Ling Han did not feel too bored. A journey of about 2,000 miles couldn't really be considered too long, and as they managed to travel about 800 miles in a single day 3 days later, they finally arrived at Blood-Gushing Mountain. The Blood-Gushing Mountain did not occupy too large an area. From east to west, north to south, it only occupied about 100 miles square or so. But the mountain was extraordinarily tall and steep, as if it was an arrow shot towards the clouds, going straight up into the sky. If one raised their head to look, no matter how good their sight was, they wouldn't be able to see the top. The extreme height of the mountain put it in a class of its own. There was a large amount of greenery on this mountain, and the tall trees covering the mountain could even approach 1,000 meters in height, as if they were the titans of the ancient times standing proudly on the mountain. But, strangely enough, there were not many animals here. Ling Han and the others very quickly arrived at the location of the underground river. It was very easy to find because Blood-Gushing Mountain was not too big. The recent earthquake caused the appearance of an underground river, and it could be easily spotted from afar. The ground cracked, and out appeared an underground river about 100 feet wide. The river water was extremely clear, and when they got close to it they could feel a piercing cold. They followed the river upstream, and after about an hour, a blockade appeared in front of them. This was a man-made fence created from bamboo. It was only half completed, and there were people all around it being busy. From the looks of it, they were ordinary villagers. However, when Ling Han and the others went closer, immediately a figure shot out to block their advance. "Halt, you are not allowed to advance further," the man shouted. He looked to be in his 40s and was quite tall and sturdy, as if he was an iron tower. Ling Han scanned over this person, and could already tell the person's cultivation level 9th layer of Gushing Spring tier. 7th uncle. Lu Yutong quickly stepped out from behind Ling Han and greeted the middle-aged man. "Yutong?" The middle-aged man looked very surprised. "Why have you come here?" The secret of the underground river should only be known to the imperial family, the 8 great clans, and a very limited number of extremely powerful elite warriors. "We are here under command of Headmaster Wu Song Lin, as his fully endorsed representatives," Ling Han said. "What?" The middle-aged man was even more astonished. There were spirit tools floating out on this underground river, and it was definitely the biggest treasure trove since the establishing of Rain Country. There would definitely be debates between the various parties in the imperial city, yet what did Wu Song Lin do? He actually sent a few juniors over as his representatives. This was really taking things too lightly, wasn't it? "This is my master's letter." Li Si-chan took out a letter. Wu Song Lin of course knew that a mere verbal statement was no guarantee, and so had already prepared his token and a letter written by his hand as proof. The middle-aged man took the latter, but with his status he did not have the right to open the letter. He only said, "Please come with me." He led the way while Ling Han and the others followed behind. "This is my 7th uncle. His name is Lu Bucheng," Lu Yutong introduced. Ling Han nodded. While a cultivation level of the 9th layer of Gushing Spring tier was not something he would take seriously, in the small place that was Rain Country, it was indeed very impressive. Just think, Diyuan City had under its jurisdiction such a large area, yet only the Diyuan King himself had reached Spiritual Ocean tier. Thus, the cultivation level of the 9th layer of Gushing Spring tier could be declared as an elite warrior wherever he was in Rain Country. In truth, as long as one managed to break through to Gushing Spring tier, they'd be considered desirable pillars of support for any party in Rain Country, able to help carry the weight of the party. When they walked a little further ahead, they saw that there were a few martial artists standing guard on the river bank, their eyes firmly focused on the river's surface, as if there were treasures lying within. Their attention was fully focused on the river's surface, not daring to have the slightest bit of carelessness. When they walked further ahead, they saw that there was actually a fishing net stretched out in the river, and there were people standing guard at both sides. "It's here. It's here." Someone gasped in astonishment, causing Ling Han and his group to stop walking and look towards the river. They saw that a jade bottle was floating downstream. There were multiple damaged spots on the body of the jade bottle, and the intact places sported a few engraved seals. The seals looked very complicated, as if they were depicting the Tao of heaven and earth, ancient and mature. "Spirit tool." Ling Han's eyes lit up. He had been a powerful warrior of heaven tier in his last life, and so of course had his own spirit tools. He had even managed to create his own spirit tools, so he was definitely more capable than everyone else here in the evaluation of spirit tools. When he swept his eyes over it, he could tell that this spirit tool was nothing ordinary. It was at least a level 8 one. Such a spirit tool is qualified to develop its own spirit, he thought. The jade bottle quickly floated into the fishing net, and as its advance was stopped by the net, it instantly stopped. But a seal on the jade bottle instantly flashed, and pooh, a huge hole was torn in the net, and the jade bottle continued to follow the flow of the river, heading further downstream. Everyone watched as it floated further downstream, and they saw that the several martial artists standing guard a bit further downstream all moved, trying to catch hold of the jade bottle. Yet this time even more seals on the jade bottle shone, and it zoomed into the skies, and as if it was a shooting star, it streaked across the sky until it disappeared from sight. A spirit tool, and like that it was gone. So that's the case. Ling Han nodded. Setting up fishing nets and various other blockades at a spot furthest upstream to detain the floating spirit tools, and finally, having no other choice, attempting to actually use manpower to fish out the spirit tools. After all, if they used the fishing net, they would not provoke too big a reaction from the spirit tool, but once they directly used their hands to try to catch hold of it, the spirit tool would automatically react and immediately disappear. It was indeed a spirit tool that had its own spirit. Until now, no spirit tool has been successfully intercepted? Ling Han asked Lu Bucheng. Chapter 119, Fishing for Spirit Tools. Lu Bucheng cast a glance at Ling Han, a spark of displeasure washing over his face. A little junior actually dared to ask him questions? Did he have no respect for his seniors? But for the sake of his niece, he did not immediately fly into a rage. Instead, he simply said with a darkened expression, there were indeed a few that were successfully captured, but they were all the more heavily damaged treasures. The spirits in some of them had already deteriorated, which was why we managed to intercept them. May I take a look? Ling Han asked. Lu Bucheng could finally bear it no longer. How precious and priceless were these spiritual treasures. Even if they were horribly damaged, they were still the most valuable of treasures. The seals engraved on them possessed a very high research value because within them was engraved the martial intent of ultimate warriors of the past. Perhaps there would appear several ultimate elites of spiritual infantry with help from the research done on these seals, which would lift the overall level of martial arts in Rain Country to another level. How could a little youngster like yourself be allowed to look at such priceless items? Even he himself did not have the right to. Hang, don't daydream. He rebuked, though his words were not too harsh. For the sake of his niece, he only intended to give this young man a little warning. Seventh uncle. Lu Yutong was a bit anxious, but when she saw no hint of displeasure on Ling Han's face, she felt slightly relieved and said quickly, "What's wrong with just taking a look? It won't break from just looking." Lu Bucheng almost spat out blood in his shock. Was this still that extremely talented, extraordinarily clever niece of his? Why did it seem as if there was something wrong with her head that she actually said such strange words? What did "it won't break from just looking" mean? The emperor also won't break from just taking a look, but was he someone you can simply meet with as you like? This was an issue about having the right to or not. I cannot make a decision on this matter. It's best we meet with the several officials in charge. He said. This was the truth. He was merely in the 9th layer of Gushing Spring tier. In the clan he could be considered above average in terms of power, but was definitely not one of the core people of the clan. Not to mention it was not just the Lu clan in this place. Why didn't you say so earlier? What are you acting so proud for if you can't make a decision? Ling Han shook his head. Damn. Lu Bucheng almost spat out blood again. This young man really remembered his grudges. He had only rebuked him a bit, and the young man had remembered his reprimand and said such harsh words to repay him. He wanted to fly into rage at that moment, but he recalled that though Ling Han was here with Lu Yutong, the token he was holding on to belonged to Wu Songlin. If he made a move, that would mean not giving face to Wu Songlin. Truth to be told, he definitely did not have this right. If the clan found out about this, he would definitely be ordered to offer a humble apology and kneel in front of Wu Songlin to wait for the latter's judgment. To pay such a price just to vent a moment's anger, Lu Bucheng was not so foolish. He gave a humph and said nothing more, only continuing to lead them forwards. Ling Han broke out into a smile. He would of course not lower himself to Lu Bucheng's level. He only intended to play around with him a bit. Who asked Lu Bucheng to be so blind? The four of them did not say anything else. They simply walked quickly and very soon, a tent appeared in front of their eyes. Lu 7, why have you brought some youngsters over here? When a middle-aged man saw them, a strange expression filled with incomprehension appeared on his face. This was an extremely important place. Was it a place you could just casually bring people over to? They have Grandmaster Wu Songlin's token and letter, and are his fully endorsed representatives. Lu Bucheng said in irritation. What? The middle-aged man was shocked. That was Wu Songlin, a person only below the Rain Emperor in status, and someone who was on equal standing with the clan heads of the 8 great clans. Anyways, I'm going to bring them to the officers in charge first. When Lu Bucheng saw this man's astonished expression, a feeling of satisfaction rose up in his heart. He had also been so flabbergasted just now, and now that there was someone to share his utter shock, he felt inconceivably pleased. He brought Ling Han and the others to the biggest tent in the area. This tent was where all of the representatives from the various parties discussed matters, and currently, there were 3 high-ranking persons here overseeing things. What, they are here to represent Grandmaster Wu? The 3 high-ranking officials were all dumbstruck. This was a place that involved high-level spiritual tools, and Wu Songlin actually sent 3 youngsters over to represent him, not to mention that 2 of them were only in element-gathering tier. This was unbelievable to them. Yes, this is my master's token and a letter by his hand, Li Sichan said. The 3 high-ranking officers studied these 2 items. This was indeed Wu Songlin's token, and the handwriting on the letter was definitely his as well. Of course, though there was a token and a letter because this was a very crucial matter, they would still immediately send a message to the Imperial City to confirm things with Wu Songlin. Alright, then you can all stay here first. You can participate in fishing for spirit tools, one of the high-ranking individuals said. Fishing for spirit tools, why did that sound so strange? Because there was a limited number of tents available, Ling Han occupied one of his own, but Lu Yutong and Li Sichan would have to squeeze into one. Ling Han was here on behalf of Wu Songlin, so he now had the right to know more information. There were altogether 10 different parties here. Aside from the imperial family, there were also the 8 great clans as well as Huyang Academy. Of course, of the Huyang Academy, only the 2 headmasters had the right to take part in this, while the others did not even know something like this had happened. As for Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, they were excluded from this matter. After all, they were not a local party of Rain Country, but an organization that spread over a considerable number of countries. If this was known to them, then probably in a short time, the various countries surrounding Rain Country would also send their own elites to snatch the spiritual tools. The crux of the matter was, where did the source of this underground river lie, and why were there so many spiritual tools that came floating out on the waters of this underground river? Could it be that it was a trove of spiritual tools? Or perhaps the abandoned site of an ancient sect? If it was the latter, then aside from spiritual tools, there could also possibly be cultivation techniques, alchemical pills, and divine medicines. Thus, this matter needed the highest level of secrecy. Why did they not go against the river's flow and enter, heading towards the source of the underground river? That's simple, they could not. Once they dived into the underground river, they would soon encounter an invisible wall, which stopped them from continuing to advance. This was discovered by several powerful warriors of spiritual ocean tier. Because the danger level was unknown, it was naturally impossible to allow martial artists of Gushing Spring tier or weaker to take the risk. In Rain Country, Gushing Spring tier was the average standard while Spiritual Ocean tier were the elites. There were really too few martial artists who have managed to break through to Spiritual Pedestal tier. There were only such martial artists within the Imperial family, the 8 great clans and Huyang Academy. As the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was considered a foreign party, it was not included. There were pitifully few powerful warriors of Spiritual Pedestal tier in the various great parties. They were all in seclusion, trying to break through to Flower Blossom tier in order to surpass the limitations of age, and become the true elite of the elites. Thus, even if there were indeed spiritual tools discovered here, the few warriors of Spiritual Pedestal tier were still not attracted over. Unless there would appear a proof that there were also high-grade cultivation techniques, divine medicines or something of the sort here. In that case, the powerful warriors of Spiritual Pedestal tier would definitely be unable to still remain calm and nonchalant. Once Ling Han understood the inner workings of the matter, he went with the 2 girls to the river bank. They were now also able to use the fishing net to fish for spiritual tools, but it was not allowed to directly use their hands. One could do it, but one would have to go to the spot furthest downstream first. After all, once these spirit tools sense the presence of humans, they would automatically activate and fly off. Thus, this could only be attempted as the last resort. The situation here was a bit funny. One after another, elites of Gushing Spring tier and above, as if they were fishermen, stretched out fishing nets, waiting for the spiritual tools to float past and enter into their nets, and trying to haul them in. Another one's here. Someone suddenly called out. From upstream, a saber floated on its way downstream. Chapter 120 Huge Doubt. How could such a heavy saber float so easily on the water's surface? This was the mystical nature of spiritual tools. Some would be as heavy as a mountain, yet some would be lighter than a feather. It all depended on the kind of martial intent engraved in the spiritual tool. At first, Ling Han did not pay too much attention to it. But when his gaze swept over the floating saber and he saw the symbol engraved on the saber's hilt, his expression changed instantly, and his entire body began trembling. "What is it?" Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both asked at the same time, and when they saw that the other had said the exact same thing, they both gave a humph. Their eyes followed Ling Han's gaze, but when they discovered there was a picture of a naked girl carved onto the saber's hilt, they both felt embarrassed and could not hold themselves back from grumbling. Men were all indeed lecherous. Even Ling Han was no exception to this. Ling Han did not answer. He only kept staring at that saber as if he had seen something incredible on it. In his last life he had in total taken 4 disciples. 2 of them learnt the art of alchemy from him, while the other 2 studied martial arts from him. Of the 2 that studied martial arts from him, one was named Qin Ruijing while the other was named Jianghu Feng. Qin Ruijing was a more serious and mature character, while Jianghu Feng was an extremely lively character, and a self-proclaimed romantic. Jianghu Feng had a very weird habit. He liked to carve the picture of a naked girl on his weapons, and his expertise was in saber techniques. Was this a weapon that had once been used by Jianghu Feng? Though Ling Han had never seen this saber before, there definitely were not that many people who would carve a naked girl on their saber. Moreover, they'd have to at least be in deity transformation tier, so the possibility of another person was even lower. Ling Han could practically confirm that the original owner of this saber must be his crazy disciple. Most importantly, Ling Han recognized Jiang Yufeng's style of drawing, so there could definitely be no mistake. After 10,000 years, he naturally knew that his 4 disciples had long died of old age. Thus, he did not think too much about them even after his rebirth. After all, life and death and age and illness were all natural ways of the world. But a weapon that had once been used by his disciple actually floated out on the waters of an underground river, and that was even along with other spiritual tools. This caused innumerable suspicions and doubts to arise within Ling Han's mind. Why? Why was Jiang Yufeng's weapon here? Ling Han's eyes focused on the saber. This saber was indeed very heavily damaged. There were nicks all over the saber's hilt, and the saber's blade was broken. However, because the materials used to forge the saber were indeed excellent, even after 10,000 years, the blade still remained as bright as water, without any signs of rust at all. Based on what he saw, he could deduce that Jiang Yufeng must have experienced a huge battle, and even his weapon was broken from it. As for Jiang Yufeng, a person who loved his weapons as if they were his very life, even if his saber was heavily damaged, he would still retrieve it to be carefully buried. Yet it now actually appeared floating on the waters of this underground river. A foreboding feeling suddenly arose in Ling Han's heart. Could it be that something unexpected had happened to Jiang Yufeng? But one has to understand, in his last life, not just him, even his 4 disciples who had followed him, the greatest alchemist in history, were all pill bottles, advancing through the ranks with the support of alchemical medicines. As a result, their power had risen extremely quickly. At that time, though Jiang Yufeng had yet to break through to heaven tier, he had already reached deity transformation tier. If he was given another 100 or 200 years, it was definitely no issue for him to break through to heaven tier. Moreover, he had altogether 4 disciples. If Jiang Yufeng had encountered a life and death calamity, how could it be possible that the other 3 would just stand by and watch? Could it be that it was a problem that could not be solved even with the combined forces of all 4 of his disciples? What had actually happened? A powerful urge rose suddenly within Ling Han. He wanted to advance to the source of this underground river to see if he could find some clues about what had happened. It's mine. It's mine. All of them acted immediately. After all, this saber was heavily damaged, so it was likely that the spirit within had already deteriorated. It no longer had visible might, and was easily captured by the fishing net. Thus, everyone began fighting over this saber. That was a spiritual tool. Even if it was a damaged one, it had extremely high value for research. If they managed to decipher even only one of the martial intent engravings on it, it would definitely allow them to drastically strengthen themselves. Ling Han's gaze grew cold and he declared, "This saber is mine." All of them were at first stunned before breaking out into raucous laughter. Is this real? A little brat in element gathering tier actually dared to fight over the saber with elites of gushing spring tier like themselves. But though they laughed, they immediately came to blows. There were no rules in this place. The spiritual tool would belong to whoever managed to get their hands on it. With a long whistle, Ling Han barged into the midst of the ongoing battle. How dare you? Those elites of Gushing Spring Tier raged. A mere martial artist in Element Gathering Tier also dared to fight over the saber with them. The hierarchy of martial arts was extremely strict, just like the hierarchy of alchemists. When a yellow-grade low-level alchemist met with a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist, the former would have to pay his salutations politely, behaving like a junior. Similarly, Element Gathering Tier martial artists would have to behave like obedient grandsons in front of Gushing Spring Tier martial artists. They didn't even have the right to stand together with the latter, what more to fight with them? Get lost. One of them stretched out a hand in a palm strike towards Ling Han. Gushing Spring Tier martial artists could give form to their origin power, which increased the power of their attacks by multiple folds. Thus, even if he had not used his full power in this attack, this blow was still an extremely terrifying thing for someone of Ling Han's current level. Ling Han. Lu Yutong gasped in shock and quickly leaped forwards, wanting to save Ling Han from this blow. Yet she had just barely moved when Lu Bucheng intercepted her and held firm onto her shoulder, stopping her advance by force. Ninth layer of Gushing Spring Tier against the first layer of Gushing Spring Tier, this would doubtlessly be a one-sided battle. Yet Ling Han only focused on that saber, and with all his might, circulated the indestructible heaven scroll. Using the exiting cloud steps, he was as quick as lightning. Who? That elite of Gushing Spring Tier did not think that Ling Han would have such a terrifying burst of speed, and carelessly did not use his full power, which allowed Ling Han to dodge the attack and break through. The others were all embroiled in a fierce battle with each other, and similarly did not take a little junior of Element Gathering Tier seriously, which allowed Ling Han to take advantage of the gap and advance nearer and nearer to the saber. How dare you? These people were at first stunned before they all became furious, and all shot out palm strikes towards Ling Han. This was incredible. They were all high-layer Gushing Spring Tier elites, and the weakest among them was already in the 7th layer. Now that they had all attacked Ling Han at the same time, the momentum created was like a landslide and tsunami altogether, extremely terrifying in might. Peng, Ling Han was unsurprisingly flung away, but what struck the others speechless was that this guy actually grabbed the saber in passing, and wrapped his arms around it. No matter, it's just a little junior. Let us first decide who's the victor among us, then decide who this saber belongs to. One of the elites of Gushing Spring Tier declared. Nonsense, what do you mean by comparing might? How fair is that? Then let me invite an elder of my clan to compare might with you, how about that? First come first served, it belongs to whoever hauls it in. This was agreed by everyone. Why is it now that we have to fight over it and the strongest wins? We are all merely in Gushing Spring Tier. Even if the ownership of the saber is decided by power, it should not be us fighting. Why not we do it this way then? Let us all draw lots and it will belong to whoever draws a good lot. All of them argued loudly, yet did not see Ling Han's body quiver once, and slowly he had sat upright. All of them had very important backgrounds, thus even though they were engaged in a fierce battle over spiritual tools, none of them dared to make a killing move. And it was exactly because of this that Ling Han managed to have a chance to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. But even so, because of so many simultaneous attacks from these elites, quite a number of his bones were broken, and there was also severe damage done to his internal organs, so he was very heavily injured. Ordinarily, the current him could only be carried off to heal his injuries, and there was no way for him to leave his bed within at least 10+ days. But there was a drop of indestructible true fluid within his body. Successfully cultivating the body of dead tree allowed him to congeal a single drop of indestructible true fluid, and the main purpose of the indestructible true fluid was to heal injuries. No matter how severely injured he was, as long as there was a single breath left in him, he could be healed. This was the true terror of the indestructible heaven scroll. Chapter 121, Might of the Treasured Saber. Ling Han sent a mental command, and this drop of indestructible true fluid instantly dispersed. Like dew, it moistened every single part of his body. His damaged internal organs as well as his fractured bones were healing at a terrifying pace. One has to understand, even with Ling Han's talent, he had still spent 10,000 years' time to comprehend the first level of cultivation techniques of the indestructible heaven scroll. How could this single drop of indestructible true fluid that he had managed to congeal not be awesome? It could practically revive a dead person and allow new flesh to be grown on bones. It definitely could be claimed as the ultimate treasured medicine. Someone finally discovered that Ling Han had managed to sit upright, and a shocked expression flashed over his face. They were all very clear that none of them had made a killing move in the barrage of blows just now, but so many of them had all struck at the same time. Even if none of them made an attempt to kill, it should have been more than enough to cause serious injury to Ling Han. There was nothing to be done about it. Who asked this brat not to know what's good for him? In a way, this also allowed him to learn a valuable lesson. Yet the brat actually managed to so quickly get up. This was a big enough shock that their eyes were about to pop out from the astonishment. How could this be? Could it be that this brat was wearing some kind of treasured armor that could disperse part of the power behind any attacks that hit him? That should be the case. How could there be any other possibility? Brat, hand over the treasured saber. That is not something that you should wield. A middle-aged man shouted. Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open. The indestructible true fluid had completely exercised its effects, allowing him to mostly heal his injuries. He did not answer the speaker, but rather inserted his divine sense into the treasured saber in his hands to activate the spiritual tool concealed within the saber. He was no idiot. He could heal his injuries once with the help of the indestructible true fluid, but there was no way he could heal them a second time. Since he dared to grab food from the tiger's mouth, he would have to resuscitate this treasured saber. That way, what could a few gushing spring-tier martial artists do against him? He was Jianghu Feng's master, and the former's martial arts were all taught by him. They were both of the same line of martial arts, so there was a high possibility that he could use the treasured tool left behind by Jianghu Feng. This was a risk, but he could not consider too much about it anymore. How dare you ignore me, little junior? The middle-aged man who had spoken previously instantly grew furious. All of the people here were the heirs of the imperial family or the 8 great clans, so all of them had extremely high pride. How could they tolerate a junior putting on airs in front of them? He immediately acted. His origin power was given form, becoming a colossal palm which headed towards Ling Han in a grabbing motion. Li Yuan, you wish. Immediately, someone else made a move to stop him. He was of course not trying to help Ling Han, but it was rather that he feared this Li Yuan would take advantage of this opportunity to grab the treasured saber. Bastard. Li Yuan indeed had that kind of idea, and was enraged by this man's move to stop him. He could not help but immediately come to blows with the person who had attempted to stop him. Brat, hand over the treasured saber. Another person rushed over with the intention to grab the saber. It's mine. Mine? The battle royale had once again begun. All of them were fighting with each other, trying to get close to Ling Han. Capturing this brat would mean they would be able to obtain the treasured saber. As for Ling Han's own power, they had all automatically ignored any threat he could pose to them. He was after all only a brat in the 5th layer of element gathering tier. You all, have you had enough? Ling Han suddenly stood. His eyes cast over the group, holding a gaze that trembled with power. All of them experienced a shock. It was as if the young man standing in front of them was not a little martial artist of element gathering tier, but an ultimate warrior even stronger than the elders of their respective clans. They all felt indescribably weak and minuscule in front of Ling Han. But they immediately came back to themselves. Just a little brat, and he actually gave them such a feeling? This was really much too shameful. Hand over the treasured saber quickly. Li Yuan once again moved, making a grabbing motion towards Ling Han. Get lost. Ling Han waved the saber in a slash. Shwa, a bright flash washed out from the saber as bright as a shooting star. Pooh. Li Yuan suddenly stumbled backwards, one hand pressing down on his chest. Fresh blood gushed forth from between his fingers, and his face had instantly turned pale. What? All of the others were flabbergasted with shock. One has to know that Li Yuan was in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier, yet he was actually injured with one wave of Ling Han's saber. How could they accept this reality? The treasured saber, it must be the might of the treasured saber. It was nothing new for them to have obtained damaged spiritual tools. After all, it was as if all of them were dead. The value of them lay only in the martial intent engraved in the seals upon the body of these spiritual tools. But Ling Han had barely just obtained this treasured saber, yet he could actually activate the might of the treasured saber. How inconceivable was that? Ling Han stood, wielding the saber in his hands, and asked, "Just now, you all really had fun ganging up on me, huh?" Hiss. all of them could not help but take a step back. Who would have thought that a little junior in the 5th layer of element gathering tier would suddenly possess the ability to pose a threat to high-level martial artists of Gushing Spring tier? There was no way that Ling Han would stay nice. He pounced, and the treasured saber in his hand continuously spat out flashes of light. The might of the treasured saber was not something that mere Gushing Spring tier martial artists could stand steadfast against. As the light from the treasured saber washed over them, without an exception, all of them were flung backwards from the power behind the blows. How could this be? This brat actually managed to resuscitate the spiritual tool. I don't believe it. All spiritual tools that can be successfully captured had their spirits deteriorated. Not even powerful warriors of spiritual ocean tier would be able to activate their abilities, yet how could it be that a little brat of element gathering tier actually managed to activate the might of the spiritual tool? Everyone were gasping in astonishment, stuck in a state of absolute disbelief. But so what if they did not believe it? Now they could only suffer a harsh thrashing from Ling Han's hands. "Ah!" They all shouted and screamed. Just now, Ling Han had suffered severe injuries from their hands, and now the tables were turned, so how could it be that he would be merciful towards them? As the light from the saber danced, all these people were easily thrashed. As for Lu Bucheng, his face continued to twitch uncontrollably. Thank goodness he had acted to stop Lu Yutong, and so did not take part in the ganging up on Ling Han. Otherwise he would not have been missed out in this thrashing. To be thrashed in this manner by a little junior, how humiliating. But was this brat a monster? Why was it that he could activate an ancient spiritual tool? After Ling Han had heavily thrashed Li Yuan and the others, he stared at Lu Bucheng for a moment. This stare from Ling Han caused coldness to rise within the latter's heart, and Ling Han finally lowered the saber's hilt, sighing secretly. This saber was much too heavily damaged, and the spirit within was already long dead. The only thing left behind was a tiny scrap of consciousness. Because his martial intent was in the same vein as Jianghu Feng's, he managed to activate this scrap of consciousness, but he would not be able to use it many more times before even this tiny scrap of consciousness would completely deteriorate. By that time, aside from being a bit sharper, there would be no difference between this saber and other normal weapons. Ling Han, are you all right? Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both stepped forward at the same time. How could this brat not be all right? Can't you two see that the others are all heavily thrashed? Lu Bucheng mocked in his thoughts. Ling Han was filled with troubled thoughts, so he only nodded towards these two girls before taking the saber and returning to his own tent. Though he had injured a lot of people, it was absolutely normal for injuries and fights to result from fighting over treasures. Moreover, with Wu Songlin's support and having to give face to Wu Songlin, who would dare say anything? Moreover, a large group of Gushing Spring tier martial artists actually lost against a young man in the 5th layer of element gathering tier. How could they actually lower their pride to say that they would attempt revenge or something of the sort? Ling Han sat within his tent and placed the saber on his lap, studying it closely. If the spirit within had not died, based on his current power, there was no way he could manage to control this saber. The saber would only need to emanate a little bit of aura and he would be killed off. But now, this actually gave him the chance to study it closely. Jianghu Feng had broken through to heaven tier. Ling Han first confirmed this fact, because the martial intent engraved in the seals on the saber had reached the level that was equal to his own level in his last life. Thus, it was without question that this was a spiritual tool that Jianghu Feng had forged after he had broken through to heaven tier. But a weapon of an ultimate warrior of heaven tier was actually heavily damaged in battle, and even the spirit within this spiritual tool was dead. What kind of enemy did Jianghu Feng actually encounter? Chapter 122, Light of God. Moreover, Jianghu Feng's talent was the lowest among all his disciples. Since even he had managed to break through to heaven tier, his other 3 disciples would all have definitely broken through too. If the 4 of them joined forces, Ling Han could think of no one that could defeat them. Yet Jianghu Feng's weapon was actually so completely broken from what looked to be a huge battle, and came floating out on the waters of an underground river with other spiritual tools. Could there have been a battle royale among the ultimate warriors of heaven tier? Ling Han lightly knocked on the saber's blade. He had already decided that no matter what, he would have to go to the source of the underground river to take a look. However, he managed to activate the spiritual tool and had even defeated a large group of Gushing Spring tier elites. This naturally engendered the interest and attention of the higher ranks, so he was invited over that night, apparently to study the secrets behind the spiritual tools together. Ling Han did not refuse. He too wanted to take a look at the other spiritual tools. As a result, on this night, a total of 11 spiritual tools were placed on a table in front of him. All of them looked heavily worn out as if they were damaged. If it was not said, who would believe that the things lying on this table were all immeasurably valuable? Young friend Ling, how did you manage to resuscitate the spiritual tool? A spiritual ocean tier warrior from the Zhao clan asked. His name was Zhao Wuxia, and in his younger days his nickname was Nobleman Wuxia. His reputation as a romantic had once spread through the entire imperial city, but unfortunately he was already in his twilight years now, so the charm and grace of his youth were long gone. This old man was already in the 9th layer of spiritual ocean tier, and had been stuck for many years. Even if he managed to advance and break through to spiritual pedestal tier, he would not have too many years to enjoy his new position. After all, anyone who did not manage to break through to flower blossom tier were all mortals. The only difference was whether they were weaker or stronger mortals. Ling Han smiled and said, I don't know either. I had only grabbed the spiritual tool, and somehow, naturally gotten the acknowledgement of the spiritual tool. The 7 old men who were seated all showed expressions of disbelief. However, because Ling Han represented Wu Songlin, no matter how displeased they were, they dared not show it too openly. Zhao Wuxia smiled and said, then that is really a coincidence. Somehow, young friend Ling is the one who encountered this kind of coincidence. That's right, I never imagined that something so coincidental would happen either. Ling Han laughed as he took up one of the spiritual tools from the table and studied it closely. The 7 old men did not stop him. They were all observing every move that Ling Han made. Perhaps the key to activating these spiritual tools was some kind of special movement, so they naturally would not miss out on any single movement from Ling Han. But they were destined to be disappointed because this time, Ling Han was really just studying these spiritual tools. All of these spiritual tools were heavily damaged, and the spirits of some of them had completely deteriorated. Moreover, the martial intent engraved in the seals on these spiritual tools were completely of a different vein than Ling Han's own, so to him, all these spiritual tools were the same as mere trash. Of course, the martial intent engraved in the seals on these spiritual tools still possessed a high value for research, because Ling Han could confirm that these were all level 9 spiritual tools, forged by the powerful warriors of heaven tier. He rubbed his chin and slipped into pensive thought. In that generation of his, there were merely 7 powerful warriors of heaven tier. Even if his 4 disciples very quickly made their way up into the ranks of heaven tier, after he died, there would have been only 10 heaven tier warriors. Yet just here there were already 11 spiritual tools. Ling Han had seen it very clearly. The martial intents engraved within these 11 spiritual tools were all different. In other words, they were forged by 11 heaven tier warriors. Moreover, these spiritual tools were only those that had been successfully fished. An even larger number of spiritual tools had not yet had their spirits deteriorated, and had long escaped capture. Going by these calculations, exactly how many powerful warriors of heaven tier had there been? 100? 1,000? How could there have been so many? Ling Han did not understand. Could it be that after he had died, a golden age came to the field of martial arts, allowing heaven tier warriors to rise up one after another? If that was not the case, how else could this be explained? He closely studied the other 10 spiritual tools. The martial intents engraved on them were all very unfamiliar, and definitely did not belong to the other 6 rulers that had been his equals. It looks like unless he headed to the source of the underground river, there was no way for him to get more information. Ling Han shook his head and placed the spiritual tool back down on the table. He asked, Everyone, have you managed to think of some way to break through the invisible blockade to advance to the source of the underground river? Hearing him address them as everyone, Zhao Wuxia and the others all revealed expressions of displeasure. The hierarchy of martial arts was extremely strict, and a little martial artist of element gathering tier actually dared act so casually in front of them? Yet the latter represented Wu Songlin, and Wu Songlin was in spiritual pedestal tier, and so was much stronger than them. Going by this calculation, Wu Songlin's representative indeed had the right to be their equal. They all felt aggrieved and started to grumble about Wu Songlin. Why had he sent such a representative over? Wasn't this a deliberate insult to them? There is no way to break through that blockade. Most likely, even spiritual pedestal tier warriors would be helpless against it, unless that person is willing to come. Zhao Wuxia shook his head, but when he said the last few words, his eyes fell upon an old man. This was a man of the imperial Qi family, and his name was Qi Jioshan. The other 5 spiritual ocean tier warriors all nodded. That person was of course the mysterious Flower Blossom tier warrior of the Qi clan. In their eyes, Flower Blossom tier was the strongest level in this world, able to do the impossible. Yet Ling Han could not agree with this opinion. Flower Blossom tier had indeed left the bounds of mortality, and possessed unbelievable power, for example, possessing a lifespan of up to 300 years, or for another example, being able to soar through the skies. However, the spiritual tools here were all as high as level 9, and what could a level 6 Flower Blossom tier martial artist do against level 9 spiritual tools? At that time, it was even likely that ultimate warriors of heaven tier had died in battle, and had their spiritual tools broken, so how could it be that the invisible wall could be dispersed by Flower Blossom tier martial artists? He did not point this out because this was too universally shocking a thing to mention. It would be best for him to maintain a low profile. "Tomorrow I would like to go take a look," he said. Immediately there were objections, yet even more nodded in agreement. "Young friend, please do. You are representing Grandmaster Wu, so do have this right," Qi Jioshan said with a smile. Damn, what a fake smile. Ling Han thought secretly. He knew that these 7 people were still suspicious of him, wanting to see if he had some kind of special method to disperse the blockade. He did not expose their thoughts and simply nodded before taking the treasured saber and leaving. On the next day he, together with Lu Yutong and Li Xichan, followed the river's course upstream. He had originally intended to advance on his own, but could not win against the pleas of the 2 girls, so he could only bring them along. Behind them followed Zhao Wuxia and the others, altogether 14 spiritual ocean tier martial artists, including a few who had not participated in their discussion the night before. Today they had all come. The source of this underground river was the foot of the mountain, and there was no way to advance further. They could only dive into the water in order to advance further. There are no martial artists who do not know how to swim, so they all went into the water. They had not advanced much before everything in front of them turned dark. If they advanced a bit more, they wouldn't even see the fingers of their own hands anymore. They could only feel the bone-piercing cold of the river's waters. Thankfully, there was air circulating in the underground river. Otherwise, no matter how much better they were at holding their breaths than normal people, they would not be able to swim too far. After at least an hour, there actually appeared a spark of light flickering in front of them. At first, Ling Han thought that they had finally come out of the mountain, and the exit was in front of them, but very quickly he realized something was not right. It was actually a seal made up of rays of light, as if a fishing net was stretched out in front of them, stopping them from advancing further. This is light of God. Chapter 123, Attaining Private Ends by Abusing Your Position. In his last life, Ling Han had once ventured into quite a number of ancient historical sites, and in some of them there was this light of God. Shattering Void Tier lay above Heaven Tier, and it was rumored that those who managed to cultivate Shattering Void Tier to completion had the ability to shatter the void and truly transform into gods. Thus, the restrictions laid down by ultimate warriors of Shattering Void Tier were also known as Light of God. In his last life, because of his search for ways to break through to Shattering Void Tier, Ling Han had practically scoured through all the ancient historical sites he could find. As a result, he had seen this Light of God many times. A large part of the rumors could not be relied on. According to his deductions, Light of God should not have been set up by Shattering Void Tier warriors, but rather the remaining divine light that emanated from the remains of these warriors after their deaths. When he thought this, Ling Han could not help his thoughts taking a sudden turn. Could it be that a powerful warrior of Shattering Void Tier had risen at that time, and for some reason became the target of Jianghu Feng and the others ganging up on him? Should an ultimate warrior of Shattering Void Tier display his might, then it would not be strange for so many Heaven Tier warriors to die in battle against such an opponent. Of course, there was another possibility, and that was that a lot of Heaven Tier warriors had discovered the tomb of an ultimate warrior of Shattering Void Tier. In order to fight over the relics and treasures left behind by this Shattering Void Tier warrior, they were embroiled in a grand battle royale. The result was uncountable injuries and deaths, and the breakage of their spiritual tools. With this comparison in mind, Ling Han was more willing to believe that it was the former possibility. "Young friend, is there any way to break this restriction?" Zhao Wuxia asked. "There is." Ling Han nodded. If it was any other restriction he would indeed have no idea, but it was the light of God. In his last life he had broken this restriction who knows how many times. This had nothing to do with cultivation level. What was needed were the necessary ingredients. What? Zhao Wuxia and the others gasped in unison. Zhao Wuxia had simply asked in passing, and had not placed any hopes that Ling Han would be able to break the restriction. He had never imagined that Ling Han would give him such an unexpected answer. Is that true? Hearing Ling Han's answer, it rather caused a considerable amount of doubt to arise in the others. After all, Ling Han was only an element-gathering tier, so he was really much too weak in their eyes. You can choose not to believe me, but if you want me to break this seal, I need a few ingredients. If you can get me these ingredients, then I will immediately be able to break this seal, Ling Han declared. Please tell us, young friend, what ingredient do you require? Zhao Wuxia asked. Ling Han opened his mouth and recited the names of a colossal amount of ingredients. The names of these ingredients caused the faces of Zhao Wuxia and the others to turn green, and some of them even looked like they were about to spit out fire. This was practically asking them to spend their entire family fortunes. Whenever you can gather all these ingredients, then I'll be able to unseal this barrier. If you have yet to gather these ingredients, then please do not come to disturb me. Ling Han flung out these words and brought the two girls ahead to go back the way they had come, leaving behind these 10+ old men to exchange looks of indecision. Do you all think that the words of this brat could be believed? Zhao Wuxia asked, breaking the tension. Since he is Grandmaster Wu's representative, then he should not have been speaking without thinking. But this brat is only 16 or 17 years old. Does he really have such ability? It may be true that he is indeed an exceptional genius. He would not have been able to become Grandmaster Wu's representative otherwise. All of you need not trouble yourselves with these worries. This brat requires so many extremely valuable ingredients. It is already not something that can be decided by us. We had best immediately send a messenger bird back to the Imperial City to inform our respective clan elders. That's true. They all nodded in agreement, and when they went back, all of them immediately sent off messenger birds to contact the Imperial City. Messenger birds were actually a kind of demonic beasts that, after being trained, could be used as messengers. They were extremely fast in flight, and could travel a few thousand miles in a single day. Thus, on the next day they all received a reply, telling them to agree to Ling Han's request, and that all of the clans would send out spiritual pedestal tier warriors to personally deliver the ingredients over. After all, these ingredients were really much too valuable. Probably, even half of the national treasury would be empty due to such expense. A mere 4 days later, a few high-ranking persons of spiritual pedestal tier had arrived, together with the ingredients that Ling Han had asked for. Little fellow, you're so young, but you know quite a lot. A kind, gentle-looking old man entered into Ling Han's tent and smiled at him very serenely, as if he was looking at his own grandson. Yet Lu Yutong showed an expression of fear. This old man was the elder of the Li clan, and his name was Li Zhangyi, an authentic spiritual pedestal tier warrior. But don't take his kind and gentle expression at face value. In truth, this old man was a vicious and merciless character, possessing a great reputation in the Imperial City from the numbers that had died in his hands. In his youth, who knows how much blood had stained his hands. Now he was much older and had put most of his time into trying to break through to Flower Blossom tier, which allowed his bloody reputation to diminish. Only the people of the older generation now knew of this god of death. Ling Han laughed and said, I like to learn a lot of different things, so I have a bit of knowledge about a lot of different areas. Light of God was not something that could be broken through brute force. Even ultimate warriors of heaven tier could do nothing against it. As a result, Ling Han had tried a lot of methods before finally coming up with a technique that could allow him to open a door in the light of God. It really is good to be young and have a lot of time on your hands. You can learn anything you like, unlike me. I already have half a foot in the coffin, and when I close my eyes to sleep tonight, I don't even know if I will be able to open them tomorrow morning, Li Zhangyi said with a laugh. However, his laughter was a bit frightening to hear, causing goosebumps to rise on the skin of Lu Yutong and Li Xichan. Ling Han did not mind in the slightest. He had once been an ultimate warrior of heaven tier in his last life, So would he be frightened by a spiritual pedestal tier martial artist? That has to be a joke. Please return, Elder. I need to do some preparations, and after about a day I will be done and ready to break that barrier, Ling Han said. Li Zongyi could not help be surprised. This brat actually dared to chase him off? However, he now had something to request of the latter, so he did not dare to refuse. He could only make a move and leave the tent. The old ghost is finally gone. Ling Han breathed out a breath of relief, and quickly picked out a few valuable medicinal ingredients from the large amount of ingredients, and began to concoct alchemical pills in the first instant. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan were shocked to numbness when they saw this. It seems like Ling Han had attained his own ends by abusing his position, and had named a lot of unnecessary ingredients to concoct alchemical pills for his own use. To actually dare to scam the imperial family of Rain Country and the 8 great clans, Ling Han has got to be the only one. That was natural. To ask him, the Alchemy Emperor, to do something for them, how could they not offer something equal in value to their request as payment? Ling Han was at full power and did not rest for the whole day and night, continuing to concoct a large number of alchemical pills. When it was dawn the next day, he snickered and threw a pill bottle over to Lu Yutong and Li Xichan respectively and said, "This is your share of benefits and the payment for you keeping quiet." In the previous day, the 2 girls had both become his assistants, doing chores like separating the various medicinal ingredients. Otherwise, Ling Han would really not have been able to complete this large number of pills. 4 Transformations Pill. Ancient Clear Pill. Li Xichan's beautiful eyes swept over the pill bottles, and instantly gasped out in surprise. There was a clear expression of astonishment on her pretty face. There actually exists someone who can concoct these pills in this world. What 4 Transformations Pill, Ancient Clear Pill? Lu Yutong did not know much about the field of alchemy, so her face was filled with confusion. They are all spiritual medicines that can help raise one's cultivation level, and their effects are 10 times better than similar pills that are available now. But the 4 Transformations Pill is to be used by Gushing Spring tier, while the Ancient Clear Pill should be used in Element Gathering tier, Li Xichan explained. This time, Lu Yutong's expression had changed completely. 10 times the effects, what kind of concept was that? She would be able to reach the 9th layer of Gushing Spring tier within a year's time, and begin breaking through to Spiritual Ocean tier. When she just thought that she would be only 20 years old and yet reach Spiritual Ocean tier, she was almost ready to pass out. Ling Han laughed. The alchemical pills concocted by others indeed had 10 times the normal effects, but the pills he concocted would at least be worth 13 stars, and have at least 30% additional effects in addition to the 10 times. But he would not be mentioning that lest he scared these 2 girls to death. Chapter 124, Breaking the Seal. Doing good without hoping for rewards wasn't the least bit in line with Ling Han's personality. Since they wanted him to open up the light of God, then how could he not take advantage of this chance to get some benefits of his own? Putting it in a different way, asking an ultimate warrior of heaven tier to do something for them while offering this little bit of payment, it was already nice of him to agree. "Let's go. We can't have them wait too long. It would be impolite," he said. The 2 girls instantly rolled their eyes at him. The truth of the matter was that he had spent the whole day and night concocting alchemical medicines rather than doing any kind of preparations. He was obviously the one to have them wait pointlessly for a whole day, and he actually dared to say that. He really was shameless. The 3 of them left their tent. Those old monsters of spiritual pedestal tier had all waited for a long time, but old monsters would be old monsters. There was absolutely no hint of impatience on their faces. On the other hand, they were actually all smiles. All of them are really old foxes, scheming, astute, and wily. Ling Han mocked in his thoughts as he opened his mouth and said, "I've caused all you seniors to wait for too long. Many apologies. Young friend, you've worked hard." Those old monsters of spiritual pedestal tier all said with a smile. "Then let's set out." Ling Han quickly went into the main topic. He had already gotten the benefits he wanted, and he too wanted to quickly reach the source of the underground river to see what had actually happened there. All of the old monsters were a bit surprised, for Ling Han was behaving much too calmly. They were all in spiritual pedestal tier, and were the strongest people in the whole Rain Country. Should any one of them simply stomp their foot, they could easily cause the mountains and rivers to change. And now they were all gathered in one place, yet Ling Han did not even blink at their presence. How could they not be curious about the reason behind his calmness? Yet they did not know something compared to Ling Han's power in his last life. What could mere spiritual pedestal tier count as? They wouldn't even be qualified to guard his door. The group once again returned to the spot they had stopped at before, and the light of God was once again right in front of them. Ling Han began to arrange the ingredients. One after another, the ingredients were smoothly arranged by his hands, becoming a blur in the eyes of the others. Yet, there was a beauty in his movements that caused the others to uncontrollably become engrossed in watching him. I actually seem to feel a kind of rhythmic beauty from this brat's movements. So you also feel that way? This brat is really quite strange, as if every move he makes corresponds with the Tao of nature. How could there be such a person? Could it be? It is written in the ancient records that there is a kind of person that is born suited to Tao. For such a person, comprehending the secrets of martial arts is as easy as drinking water. Natural martial body. The eyes of all the old monsters lit up. If Ling Han was really a natural martial body, then he was definitely a valuable treasure. As long as one observed his movements every single day, they'd be able to very quickly gain comprehension of martial arts. Ling Han could absolutely be considered as a living spiritual treasure of martial arts. This brat has gotten the acknowledgement of Wu Songlin, so they couldn't really kidnap him by force. But what about marriage? As long as they managed to get him to marry into their clan, then it would be perfectly legitimate for him to stay in their clan residence, and even Wu Songlin would be unable to say anything against that. Ling Han had completely no idea that he had become something that everyone would be fighting over in that instant. He had his full concentration on the ingredients in his hands, and as he flung out one after another, he actually opened up a hole in the light of God, creating an opening that could allow a single person to pass through. He really succeeded. The old monsters were all struck dumb with shock. They had all made their own attempts these few days, but the might of the light of God was not something they could overcome. All they could do was simply stare at it blankly. They had never thought that Ling Han would actually succeed. This naturally increased their desires to have him marry into their clans. One of the old monsters was an impatient character, and was about to immediately pass through the opening, yet Ling Han stretched out an arm to stop him from going ahead and said, "Wait. Brat, what are you trying to do?" This old monster was a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier of the Chen clan of the 8 great clans. He had an impatient nature and was also bad-tempered. He immediately glared at Ling Han, and a strong pressure immediately emanated from him. Ling Han smiled calmly, withdrew his arm and said, "If you want to die, I won't stop you. Please go right ahead." Hearing Ling Han's words, the old monster from the Chen clan did not dare to make any reckless moves and asked, "Isn't the restriction already broken?" This can only be claimed to be a minor success. The current opening can allow an ordinary person to enter, but body refining tier would experience rejection from the restriction. The stronger your ability, the more powerful the rejection you would feel. If you try to force your way through, that would be equivalent to seeking your own death, Ling Han said. So that was it. Stupid brat, why didn't you speak early of such a big issue? You almost killed me. The old monster from the Chen clan said sheepishly, obviously a bit embarrassed. Ling Han smiled and said, "Do you not see that I have many ingredients that I haven't used yet? Wouldn't this be embezzlement on my part?" The old monsters all laughed loudly while Lu Yutong and Li Xichan kept mocking in their thoughts. This guy was so outrageously bold. He had already embezzled a lot. Ling Han continued to move and threw out various ingredients, allowing the opening to become firmer and sturdier. Now body refining tier should be able to enter. And now element gathering tier should be able to as well. Gushing spring tier. Ling Han suddenly came to a stop, because the ingredients had all been used up. He gave a sigh and said, "My ability is limited, so I can only create an opening that would allow only gushing spring tier martial artists to enter at most." The others all stared blankly. The strongest martial artist that could enter was gushing spring tier. Was this deliberate? That's right. This was something that Ling Han had done deliberately. Originally, he had intended to have this opening limited to allowing only element gathering tier to enter, but he thought that this would be too obvious, so he decided to raise the entry level to the next tier. But on the other hand, Rain Country had limited resources on hand, so even if he had not had his own intentions, the opening that he could create would at most only allow spiritual ocean tier martial artists to enter. Only gushing spring tier. The old monsters all frowned. What about this? Let us immediately send a message back to the Imperial City and have the gushing spring tier martial artists of our clans all come over immediately, someone suggested. Behind this opening possibly lay hidden a great secret treasure. Who would not want to get their hands on this treasure? These few days we'll seal off this place first and allow no one to pass through, Li Zongyi said. We should do that. All of them were worried that someone else would enter first and snatch away some fated opportunity that could be hidden behind the opening, so they all agreed to first seal off this place and wait for the various geniuses of gushing spring tier of their respective clans to arrive, after which all of them would enter at the same time. Little fellow, you have no objection, right? Li Zongyi said with a cunning smile. Of course not. Ling Han said with a smile, however, you all would need to make the most of your time. This opening can at most be maintained for 10 days only. Damn, the old monsters all rolled their eyes at this. Then why didn't you say this sooner? That way, they'd have been able to gather the geniuses of their clans early on to come over. But now, everything was in a rush, so they weren't sure how many they could actually gather. All of them once again left, and naturally, one after another, messenger birds flew off, sending the message back to the Imperial City. Ling Han sat in his tent, quietly cultivating. He had practically robbed the 8 great clans and the imperial family in one go this time, and had managed to concoct various valuable alchemical pills, which would be enough for him to enjoy quite a while without worrying about money. Robbery is really fun, he thought as he swallowed an alchemical pill. 4 days passed very quickly, and continuously, there would be arrivals of various young men and women. These were all the younger generation of the 8 great clans and the imperial family. They were either gushing spring tier or, at the very least, element gathering tier. Obviously, the old monsters suspected that there lay a secret treasure behind the restriction, and hoped that the youths of their own clans would be able to get this secret treasure. Thus, they naturally sent as many people as they could. On the 7th day, there were about 200 people of the younger generation of the various clans that had made it there. The old monsters also felt that they could no longer delay it, because there was only 3 days' time left for them. Set out. Chapter 125, 4-Season Sword Technique. Within these few days, Ling Han and the 2 girls also achieved their own breakthroughs. Lu Yutong had accumulated energy for a long time, plus she also had the 3 vanishing veins which, together with the 3 mysterious arts, allowed her to maintain an overwhelmingly rapid cultivation pace. Moreover, she also had in her hands the 4 transformations pill, so naturally her cultivation speed was even faster than before. Most importantly, the 4 transformations pill would help her break through to the 2nd layer of gushing spring tier. For most people, the barrier between cultivation levels was the hardest to pass. As long as you were willing to put in real effort or had enough alchemical pills to support your cultivation, you would be able to smoothly cultivate from the early period of any layer all the way to the peak period. But to successfully break through, that was another problem. Even if it was only from the 1st layer of gushing spring tier to the 2nd, this one step forward was extremely difficult to take. Why were there so few spiritual pedestal tier warriors in Rain Country? That was simple, they did not have enough comprehension of their cultivation levels, and were all stuck in spiritual ocean tier. And below spiritual ocean tier, there was also a large number of people who were stuck in gushing spring tier and element gathering tier. The 4 transformations pill could help a martial artist gain the comprehension of his cultivation level. If this spread out, it would be a hair-raising shock to anyone who found out. Lu Yutong was intelligent in the first place, plus she had already been at the peak period of the 1st layer of gushing spring tier. Now that she had the 8 of the 4 transformations pill, after a few days trying to break through, everything naturally went smoothly and she advanced to the next level. She did not continue to raise her cultivation level. Instead, she put effort into strengthening her foundation. After all, she managed to reach her cultivation level with the help of medicine. So if she was too greedy and continued to advance, it would lead to her foundation being unstable. In the future, this would mean that she would be unable to reach a higher cultivation level. Ling Han also taught her the 4-Season Sword Technique, which was a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. Chances were high that not even the Lu clan had this kind of martial arts technique. Perhaps only the imperial family owned such a high-level martial arts technique. Thus, Lu Yutong had broken through the day before yesterday. After breaking through, she had spent the last 2 days studying the secrets of the 4-Season Sword Technique, and if there was anything she didn't understand she would ask Ling Han. As a result, her power rose at an extremely quick pace. A Gushing Spring Tier elite actually asked for guidance about martial arts technique from an Element Gathering Tier martial artist. This seemed to be a preposterous thing, yet Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both felt that this was very natural and there was nothing strange about it. Ling Han was too much of a monster. Had he been now able to use heaven-grade martial arts techniques, most likely the two girls would have only given an ah, and then accept reality. Li Xichan also managed to advance from the third layer of Element Gathering Tier to the fourth layer. Most alchemists were pill bottles, depending on alchemical pills to forcibly raise their cultivation levels, so naturally her body was highly immune to medicinal effects. Thankfully, her cultivation level was still low, so this immunity to medicines was not too strong, thus she also managed to advance to the next layer. Meanwhile, Ling Han broke through to the sixth layer of Element Gathering Tier, and while his cultivation level was very low, his battle prowess was an extremely terrifying thing. 5 elements origin nuclei, 6 flashes of sword chi, indestructible heaven scroll, body of dead tree, all these added together would be enough to raise his attack power to 15 stars, while his defenses were even stronger. It would not be wrong to claim his defenses reached the level of 20 stars. It's still not enough. Ling Han shook his head. Only once he stepped into Gushing Spring Tier would he be able to use black-grade high-level martial arts techniques. The power upgrade from black-grade martial arts techniques was not something that yellow-grade martial arts techniques could compare to. He was sitting on a mountain of treasures, yet he could only sigh. This feeling really displeased him. Lu Yutong only rolled her eyes at him. This guy was only in the second layer of body refining tier just over half a year ago, yet he had already broken through to the sixth layer of Element Gathering Tier now, and he still thought that it was too slow. What about other normal martial artists then? They left their tents to meet with the others. Yutong, so you've already arrived. When a young man saw Lu Yutong, he immediately approached them. This man was Hu Bo. Watch my sword. When Lu Yutong saw him, she did not say anything else, but simply drew her sword and attacked him. That day Hu Bo, in order to find her, went over to the Ling clan residence and made a huge commotion, killing and injuring a considerable number of people, which caused her to feel extremely guilty. Now that she had seen him, it was as if she had seen a mortal enemy. How could she hold herself back anymore? Naturally, from the first instant she saw him, she immediately began attacking him. What? When Lu Yutong attacked him, Hu Bo's expression immediately changed. Second layer of Gushing Spring Tier, she had actually reached the second layer of Gushing Spring Tier. Previously, when he had seen Lu Yutong in Grey Cloud Town, she had just broken through to Gushing Spring Tier, and now it was only half a month later and she had already reached the second layer of Gushing Spring Tier. The word genius was no longer enough to describe her, right? She was like him who had also gotten the full support of his clan to develop his talent, but he was still in the peak period of the first layer of Gushing Spring Tier. It would at least be another month before he would be able to break through, and his progress was already very much praised by his clan, and he was claimed to be an exceptional genius. Yet when compared to Lu Yutong, he was an absolute idiot. Being under the fierce attacks of an elite of the second layer of Gushing Spring Tier, how could Hu Bo dare to hesitate any further? He quickly drew his own sword. If he had any slightest bit of reservations at this moment, he was likely to be defeated. If he were defeated by a woman he was pursuing, how would he still have the face to see Lu Yutong in the future? Ding 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 ding. The two long swords continued to clash with each other, creating fierce sparks of fire from the friction. Ordinarily, the second layer of Gushing Spring Tier against the first layer would be a completely one-sided domination battle, but Lu Yutong had just broken through. Moreover, her breakthrough was successful because she had used alchemical pills, so her foundation was not yet strong enough, which naturally affected her battle prowess. And though Hu Bo had also reached his current cultivation level with the help of alchemical pills, he had after all been stuck at the peak period of the first layer for quite some time, so naturally he had already solidified his foundation. Thus, the battle prowess these two could display was more or less equal, and it would be difficult to decide the victor of this battle in a short period of time. Isn't this the Pearl of the Lu clan? Why is she so strong? That's right, I remember that just barely half a year ago she was still in the 8th layer of Element Gathering Tier, and it should be at least another 2 years before she'd be able to break through to Gushing Spring Tier. Yet she is now actually in the second layer of Gushing Spring Tier. This is practically unbelievable. Tsk, this beautiful flower is really getting harder and harder to pluck. However, she is also becoming more and more desirable, such talent. Tsk, I have my eye on this woman. Nonsense, you think you're worthy of her. Those who were gathered were all embroiled in their discussions. They were all either from the imperial family or the 8 great clans, and all of their clans had power that was no weaker than the Lu clans. And since they were able to come here, this also meant that their power and talent were the best of the best, so naturally all of them had their own pride. Lu Yutong had attacked for a very long time, yet did not manage to get the upper hand, so the flames of rage in her heart became stronger and stronger. She suddenly flicked her sword, and a powerful sword intent circulated through her sword, and her whole figure became extremely solemn. 4 seasoned sword techniques, a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. This sword technique was separated into 4 different parts, each representing spring, summer, autumn, and winter. In truth, it could be considered as 4 different sword techniques, which combined into a major sword technique. The best scenario was for 4 different people to use each sword technique at the same time, which will drastically increase the power. But it was not impossible for a single person to circulate this sword technique. This required the user to have a high control over their sword, one move following after another. Spring followed by summer, autumn followed by winter, to form the cycle of the 4 seasons, which would also create a formidably powerful attack technique. Lu Yutong had only just learned a few moves of the spring rain sword technique, so naturally she was not able to form the cycle of seasons yet, which were the sword intents of spring rain, summer thunder, autumn wind, and winter snow. However, black-grade high-level martial arts techniques were still black-grade high-level martial arts techniques. Any single move would be enough to create a terrifying power. Shwa! The light from the sword was extremely cold, and there actually appeared droplets of rain dancing through the air that followed the sword as it moved. It was an impressive sight. The beauty was like a painting, and her sword was like the most beautiful scene, causing all the others to feel as if they had become drunk just from watching her dance. Even some of them who had determined to spend their whole lives on martial arts now could not help their hearts from wavering, getting drunk from watching Lu Yutong's beauty. The beauty was like jade while her sword was like a rainbow, causing a lot of them to feel the urge to write a poem or sing a song in her honor. There was only one thing left to say: it was too beautiful. Chapter 126, Alerting the Old Monsters. Meanwhile, Hu Bo did not have such a refined and elegant state of mind. On the contrary, he felt a colossal pressure, and beads of cold sweat continuously rolled down his forehead. Although Lu Yutong was as agile as a deity and her movements were so heartbreakingly beautiful, she was also like a female goddess of battle. The pressure emanating from her was so high that all his nerves were tensed. He almost felt like he wanted to throw away his sword and surrender. But if he were to give up so easily in front of so many eyes, he would definitely be harshly scolded by the elders of his clan upon his return. He gave a huge shout, and his sword quivered at a quick rhythm as he used his strongest martial arts technique. Cloud Slashing Sword. This was a secret art of the Hu clan, and was also a black-grade martial arts technique, but was only a black-grade low-level martial arts technique. The Hu clan of course also had black-grade mid-level martial arts techniques, but those were the core secret treasures of the Hu clan. How could a junior that had just broken through to Gushing Spring Tier recently be allowed to learn these techniques? If one wanted to learn black-grade mid-level martial arts techniques, one would have to be at least in Spiritual Ocean Tier and prove that one was fully loyal to the clan, ensuring no possibility of betrayal. Hong. The two of them once again clashed together, and the environment immediately became explosive and fiery. Even a few of the old monsters had come out, observing the battle with a smile, hands behind their backs. Though this level of battle in their eyes was like a child's game, Lu Yutong and Hu Bo were both likely to reach their level in the future, so naturally their attention was attracted. The Cloud Slashing Sword technique was a swift and fierce technique. It would even be able to cut the clouds floating in the sky in half, thus it was a very overbearing sword technique. On the other hand, the Spring Rain Sword technique was like a gust of wind in spring transforming into rain, silently nurturing the earth, seeming very peaceful and beautiful, an extremely gentle technique. But why was the Spring Rain Sword technique a black-grade high-level martial arts technique then? Although the rain in spring was very gentle, but at the same time, it could also contain killing intent. Shwa shwa shwa. Uncountable droplets of rain flew and danced in the air, and actually transformed into uncountable number of tiny needles, as if they were sharp swords that had shrunk an uncountable number of times. They pierced into the pores of Hu Bo's skin, and went directly into his veins. These droplets of rain were all created by the spring rain sword technique, and contained Lu Yutong's own origin power. Once they entered into Hu Bo's veins, they naturally contained a very strong destructive effect. They had only exchanged 3 moves and Hu Bo's battle prowess took a drastic drop. He was completely dominated by Lu Yutong. Under the conditions where power was almost equal on both sides, the one who had the advantage in martial arts technique would naturally gain the upper hand. What more when this was a high-level martial arts technique dominating a low-level martial arts technique. The gap between the two was not just a little bit. Ling Han nodded slightly. Yutong truly was quite talented. She had already managed to grasp the concept behind the spring rain sword technique. Although this was also in some part due to his guidance, it also proved that Lu Yutong had quite a high talent in the field of martial arts. Being able to move the spiritual qi in their surroundings and transform it into a real, solid attack, that was the strongest advantage of a black-grade martial arts technique. This can't be right. Even though Hu Bo cannot be considered to be part of the strongest elite in the younger generation of the Imperial City, he can definitely fit into the 3rd class, and definitely can be named as a well-known figure. How is it that he is so quickly at a disadvantage? It's not that Lu Yutong is so much stronger than him, but that her sword technique is much too scary, using softness to counter strength. It's a very mysterious sword technique. And if it was me against her, unless my power was strong enough to completely overwhelm her, I would be absolutely under her control because of this sword technique. Gods, what sword technique is that? The youths continued to discuss among themselves, and more old monsters were attracted to the commotion happening here. Their eyes were completely focused on Lu Yutong. The longer they watched her, the more anxious their expressions became, and the more of a very deep dread they contained. Honestly speaking, if they suppressed their power to about the same as Lu Yutong's current level, they would most probably only manage to achieve a tie in front of this sword technique, and this was still taking into account their abundant battle experience. How was this possible? They all had their own black-grade mid-level martial arts technique, as well as battle experience that exceeded Lu Yutong by who knew how many times. Yet if they battled with her on the same level, they could only manage a tie with Lu Yutong. Black-grade high-level martial arts technique. The old monsters all exchanged a look and mouthed these 6 words before they all turned their eyes towards the old monster from the Lu clan. They all only had black-grade mid-level martial arts technique, so there was a fine balance of power among all the 8 great clans. Yet now the Lu clan had a black-grade high-level martial arts technique, which naturally meant that this fine balance was broken. Even if the old monster of the Lu clan was in spiritual pedestal tier, he still started to sweat when he became the sudden focus of the attention of so many others of the same cultivation level. He began to rebuke Lu Yutong in his thoughts. Lu Yutong managed to learn such a powerful martial arts technique, yet did not save it as a trump card and actually used it in front of so many people. Wouldn't that be trying to attract others to covet this sword technique? He wanted to claim that the Lu clan did not possess this sword technique, but also knew that the other old monsters would not believe him since Lu Yutong knew this sword technique. Then wouldn't that be equivalent to the Lu clan also knowing the sword technique? But he was also extremely curious. Where had Lu Yutong learnt this sword technique from? Lu Yutong gave a light shout, and as she brandished her sword, the spring rain sword technique was becoming more and more well practiced. It was a martial arts technique after all, and the main purpose of martial arts technique was to be used for battle, so naturally she could only grasp the essence of the sword technique in true battle. The more she grasped of the essence of the spring rain sword technique, the more she looked as light as a deity. In the eyes of the audience, it was as if she was the fairy of the Jade Lake, dancing gracefully. As her sword danced, the rain droplets of spring danced with her continuously, creating a scene so beautiful it could cause suffocation. All the young men there revealed expressions of captivation. There was even a number of people who were no longer young, yet could feel their hearts wavering, as if they had returned to their youth when they would be pursuing beautiful sights and sounds, horses and dogs. Enough. The old monster from the Hu clan spoke, extending a hand. His origin power transformed into a giant palm that separated Lu Yutong and Hu Bo. This is just a spar. Take care not to overdo it. Let's just consider this as a tie. Hearing these words, all the others were snorting in derision in their thoughts. What do you mean by a tie? It would take at most another 3 moves, and Hu Bo would definitely be harshly defeated. But who dared to talk back against a spiritual pedestal tier warrior so publicly? Unless someone thought they had lived for too long and would like to end their life prematurely? Liu Tong felt very regretful. She did not intend to defeat Hu Bo, but rather to teach him a good lesson he would remember strongly. Hu Bo stepped back, but there was confusion on his face. He did not understand why Liu Tong had become so strong. And when he saw that Liu Tong had stepped back and stood beside Ling Han, a terrifying killing intent rose up within his eyes. This brat was actually still pestering Liu Tong. How hateful. Damn it. The stronger Liu Tong was and the more terrifying the talent in martial arts she displayed, the more he wanted to make this genius girl his. So, naturally, he could not bear to see her to be so close to any man. He was not the only one. When the young men in the area all saw this, they all looked at Ling Han with very unfriendly gazes. It was only now that they discovered that there was not only one beauty by Ling Han's side. There was another beauty that was completely not beneath Liu Tong by his side. Li Si-chan. Gods, the twin pearls of the imperial city that were so famous have all become his women? Damn this fuck bastard. And within this one instant, Ling Han had become public enemy number 1. Any of them who had the slightest bit of interest in Liu Tong or Li Si-chan all considered Ling Han to be their rival. Moreover, the admirers of these two girls were enough to queue up in a line that could encircle the imperial city 3 times, so the number of new enemies Ling Han had gotten could be imagined. And this was only the younger generation of the 8 great clans in the imperial family. Brother Ling, I never thought you would have arrived so early. The 3rd imperial prince stepped out and gave Ling Han a friendly smile. He was a man that was meant for great things, so he would of course not lose himself in the beauty of women. Hee, Ling Han laughed and said, can we set off now? He had already waited for quite a few days and could no longer wait to find out the secrets hidden at the source of the underground river. Chapter 127, Bone-Eating Grass. Let's set out. One of the old monsters gave a wave of his hand. Previously, the youths of his own clan were not here, so he naturally could not allow anyone else to pass through that opening first. But things were different now. Whatever reminders needed were already given, and no one was now wasting their time on pointless chatter. They all entered the river's waters. They all passed through one by one, entering into the hidden area behind the light of God. Ling Han's expression instantly became serious. If a place had the light of God, then even he Simeon, who had once been an ultimate warrior of heaven tier in his last life, had to proceed cautiously lest any careless move on his part caused his death. The reason why he had been willing to create an opening and allow so many people entry was also because he intended to have these people enter first to scout out any possible dangers. Of course, fateful encounters were always accompanied by serious danger. If one wanted to obtain great rewards, one would of course have to prepare to face great risk. This would be fair to every single person. After the opening still lay a stretch of the underground river. They continued to advance and soon, a piece of land appeared in front of them. At this moment they should be deep within the blood-gushing mountain, yet it was actually empty inside, containing a gigantic empty space. They all stepped onto land. It was not too dark here, as there was a mysterious light flickering in the area that lit up the belly of this mountain. However, they were not able to see too far ahead, as if there was something that was hindering their sight. A lot of them separated from others and left. Even those who were from the same clan had divided themselves into quite a considerable number of teams. Firstly, this was to not put all their eggs in a single basket, and secondly, even those who came from the same clan may not be completely united and close to each other. In that case it was best not to stick together. If they encountered danger, they not only would not help each other, they may even hinder each other. Very quickly, the group of people separated into their own groups and went towards all the different directions. Brother Ling, I shall take my leave first. The 3rd imperial prince raised his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction, with only the crimson-haired beauty by his side. Ling Han gave a nod and watched the 3rd imperial prince leave. All of a sudden the area had become deserted and only Ling Han, Liu Tong, and Li Si-chan were left behind. Where should we go? Liu Tong asked. This place looked like a plain. Aside from the underground river behind them, every other direction was absolutely empty. She really did not know which direction they should decide on that would be the right choice. Ling Han took out the treasured saber and used his divine sense to communicate with the scrap of consciousness in the saber, wanting to incite the instinctive reaction of the treasured saber to find the remains of Jianghu Feng. Yet there was absolutely no reaction from the treasured saber. How strange. Ling Han frowned slightly. If Jianghu Feng had really joined the ranks of Heaven Tier, then even if he had been dead for over 10,000 years, his body would still not decay. The ultimate warriors of Heaven Tier had already walked a very long way on the path of martial arts, and their martial intent was deeply carved into every drop of blood, every piece of flesh and every bone in their bodies. From a certain point of view, the remains of these ultimate warriors could also be considered as a kind of spiritual tool. In truth, a large number of spiritual tools were made from the bones of extremely powerful demonic beasts. Human bones could also be used, of course, but that was much too terrifying, so practically nobody dared to do such a thing. Thus, the remains of the user and his spiritual tool contain the same martial intent, so they should be attracting each other, yet why was there completely no reaction at all? Unless... Ling Han's expression took a swift turn. Unless there was nothing left of Jianghu Feng's body. Then, naturally there would no reaction from his spiritual tool at all. But what had actually happened at that time that even the remains of an ultimate warrior of Heaven Tier had completely disappeared? Let's just walk somewhere, he said. They didn't know which direction was the best anyways. The three of them advanced, and after they had walked for a while, Ling Han suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Liu Tong asked. Ling Han did not say anything. He went off slightly to the side of the direction they were heading in and came to the side of a huge boulder. The two girls followed in his footsteps, but did not see anything particularly interesting about this boulder. There was only a stalk of grass growing at the side of the boulder. If they had not examined it clearly, they would have thought that it was a piece of bone. What kind of grass is that? They were both very surprised. This is bone-eating grass, and it will only grow on a dead body, Ling Han explained. There was something else that he did not say, and that was that only the dead bodies of at least deity transformation warriors would cause the growth of the bone-eating grass. Yeah. The two girls instantly turned pale. Though the two of them were martial artists and death should be something very common to them, women would still be women. If a woman heard that she could possibly be stepping on a dead body, her heart would definitely skip a beat. Ling Han struck with a palm, and the huge boulder was flung away with the force of his strike. Ah! Both girls gasped in shock, for there was a skeletal hand extending out of the ground. The pure white finger bones emitted an eerie feeling. Don't be afraid. He has been dead for over 10,000 years, Ling Han said. The two girls immediately rolled their eyes at this. This young man was highly intelligent, had exceptional talent in martial arts, and was impossibly capable in alchemy, yet he was an absolute idiot when it came to his EQ. If they were afraid of this dead body, how could they still jump out to wound others in martial arts? Of course they were not afraid. Ling Han took out his sword and carefully dug away the soil around the skeletal hand. With the physical strength of an element-gathering tier martial artist, digging some soil was of course a piece of cake. Very soon after the skeletal hand appeared a skeletal arm, followed by the shoulder, and quickly there appeared a skull that was in an upright position. Why is it not lying down? The two girls asked curiously. After death, it should be impossible for one to maintain a standing position. Could it be that someone had buried him standing up after this person had died? When the power of a martial artist has reached a certain level, and his martial intent is threaded through his entire body, then he would be able to remain standing for a few hundred years even after his death, Ling Han explained. My guess is that this person died from battle here and kept maintaining this pose. Afterwards, after an uncountable number of years, perhaps something happened on the surface, causing some rocks and soil to fall from the cave ceiling which completely buried his body. The two girls were both very astonished. A person would still be able to remain standing even after death? At least they had never heard of any powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier being able to do that kind of thing. Ling Han continued to dig, and soon the complete remains were in front of their eyes. This was obviously a male, and there was still a suit of purple-colored embroidered robes that had not yet rotted on him. However, there was shockingly a hole on the chest area of the robes. This should be the location of the wound that had caused this person's death. Additionally, the rib in front of where the heart should have been when he was alive was broken. They could imagine that he had been embroiled in a fierce battle with another person, and his opponent had crushed his heart with a single punch, causing all life signs to be washed away from him after this blow. Yet, Ling Han directly removed the embroidered robes from this skeleton, causing the two girls to exclaim in disgust. This was something that had been worn by a corpse. Unfortunate, it's really too unfortunate. Ling Han sighed continuously. This is a secret treasure woven from purple jade silk. It's unfortunate that an extremely powerful blow has destroyed all its abilities. AI. He gave a light tug and the embroidered robes were easily torn open. What is this purple jade silk? Liu Tong asked. The purple jade heaven silkworm is a level 9 demonic beast, and the purple jade silk is the silk that is spat out by it, Ling Han explained very simply. Hiss. The two girls both inhaled sharply. A level 9 demonic beast. Then wouldn't that be equivalent to heaven tier? A piece of clothing that is woven from the silk that is spat out by a level 9 demonic beast? That should be the ultimate kind of treasure. Such protective armor should be able to withstand at least over 100 continuous attacks from a heaven tier warrior before being destroyed, yet from the looks of this hole, it was pierced open by a single punch. Ling Han raised his head and looked up with a burning stare. This proves that the shattering void tier indeed exists in this world. Chapter 128, Spatial Ring. The reason why Ling Han had died in his last life was because of his quest to seek the secrets behind attaining Shattering Void Tier. Now that he had seen a real proof of the existence of Shattering Void Tier, he could not help but get excited. But after his wave of excitement had passed, all he felt was worry and incomprehension. Jianghu Feng had obviously taken part in such a clash of the titans, but what was the reason for it? Everyone knew that the higher one's cultivation level was, the larger the difference there would be between the power levels of different cultivation levels. For example, he, at the 4th layer of Element Gathering tier, was able to pit himself even against an opponent in the 1st layer of Gushing Spring tier. But, once he reached Heaven tier, the difference of a single layer would be like the gap between heaven and earth. There existed a gulf that was impossible to cross between the 1st layer and the 2nd layer of Heaven tier. If there really rose up an ultimate warrior of Shattering Void tier in this world, then that was definitely an invincible existence. Why would Jianghu Feng still choose to battle such an opponent when he obviously knew he was no match for the latter? It would be fine if only one such idiot appeared. The thing was there were too many of them and all of them were powerful warriors of heaven tier. How could he believe such a thing? Beside this corpse also lay a sword, the martial intent of its previous user engraved within the seals carved onto it. This was an ultimate secret treasure, able to pass on the martial arts knowledge of this powerful warrior. Unfortunately, once it had left the restraints of the ground, the sword automatically awakened and transformed into a rainbow that exited via the water. In an instant, it had completely disappeared without any traces left behind. Ling Han shook his head with a sigh. The current him was really much too weak. Even if the greatest of treasures lay in front of him, he did not have the ability to make it his own. This feeling could really make one feel depressed. His eyes lit up all of a sudden. There was actually a ring on the finger of this corpse. If a powerful warrior such as this person was still wearing this kind of adornment, then one thing was clear. This ring was definitely a treasure. It could be a spiritual tool or could be a support-type treasure that could help one meditate and rest, but the biggest possibility of what it could be was spatial ring. It could create a dimension of its own that was a space for storage. Ling Han removed the ring, used his divine sense to scan over it, and could confirm that this was definitely the spatial ring that he had always wanted. What a huge reward, he thought. Even if he did not get anything else out of this journey, it was a big enough reward to have gotten this spatial ring. Your grin looks so terrifying, what is it? Li Si-chan said, feeling a bit creeped out. The grin currently on Ling Han's face was really too scary. Ling Han laughed and said, let me show you two a magic trick. He slipped the spatial ring onto his finger, then removed a pill bottle from his pocket. He waved it around a few times, indicating for the two girls to watch clearly. Then with a shio, the pill bottle had disappeared. The two girls gasped in unison. How could a solid pill bottle just disappear like that? Aren't you going to give me some applause? Ling Han asked with a smile. How did you make the thing disappear? Li Si-chan's eyes were wide open in a stare. If it was not the fact that Ling Han was male and she was female, she really wanted to search all over Ling Han's body. It would not be interesting if I tell you the trick to it, Ling Han laughed. He took out the pill bottles and monetary notes from his pockets and, one by one, stored them into the spatial ring. It truly was the spatial ring that once belonged to a heaven-tier warrior. The space inside was about as big as a whole house, so it could store a lot of things. The benefits of the spatial ring was not only the fact that it was convenient. Another advantage of it was that it could hide things very well. Unless the spatial ring was snatched away, there was no way the things stored inside would be found. In this tiny little rain country, probably no one else knew how to use the spatial rings, so Ling Han was very reassured. What Ling Han thought disappointing was the fact that the spatial ring was completely empty. There was nothing inside at all. There was no way an ultimate warrior of heaven tier could be this poor, of course. Ling Han deduced that this warrior of heaven tier was well aware that he was going to die in this battle, so he had left behind all the good stuff he owned to his descendants. The spatial ring most possibly only contained things like some alchemical pills that could replenish his origin power or heal his injuries, as well as his spiritual tools. Thus, the alchemical pills were used, and the spiritual tools were taken out to be used in battle, so there was naturally nothing left inside the spatial ring. Forget it, one can't be too greedy. Ling Han buried the corpse of this warrior, feeling a bit of sorrow as he did. How rare and powerful was a warrior of heaven tier. Yet in the end there wasn't even a person to collect his remains. One really has to sigh at this. Let's go. They continued to advance forwards. Those who had walked ahead of them had also discovered a corpse. Yet they were not as lucky as Ling Han, who had managed to obtain a spatial ring. They only saw a pile of white bones that shattered into dust upon a single touch. The remains of powerful warriors of heaven tier should not be so feeble, but the appearance of the bone-eating grass has changed everything. The nutrients and essence of these bones have all been absorbed by the grass, so they had become the same as those of a mortal. Thus it was natural that they were unable to withstand the eroding powers of time. If Ling Han had come just a bit later, then the corpse he had discovered would not have been as intact. The essence of the bones had not yet been completely absorbed by the bone-eating grass, so naturally the bones were still able to maintain their sturdiness. The bone-eating grass was a very odd kind of plant. It could only grow on the remains of powerful warriors of at least deity transformation tier, yet it did not have any value by itself. The essence that it had sucked out would be directly returned to nature. It could be claimed as the garbage collector of nature. Ling Han's face became more and more somber. Just the way that he had passed, he could see no less than 20 corpses of these powerful warriors. 20 corpses. When have heaven tier warriors become so cheap? What is that? Lu Yutong asked, suddenly pointing at a spot. Ling Han looked in the direction she was pointing at and saw that there was a white flower growing all alone there. The flower stem was like jade and its bud was about the size of a human fist. There was light glowing all around it. He suddenly gaped in shock, a disbelieving expression on his face. Even he, someone who had once been an ultimate warrior of heaven tier, was very shocked at it. Was proof that this flower was definitely extraordinary. That was natural, because the light flickering around the flower was the same as the light that shone from the light of God. A level 10 spiritual medicine, this could be claimed as a medicine of the gods. This is a big bonus, a really big bonus. A strange light shone from Ling Han's eyes. In his last life he had only heard of level 9 treasured medicines, and had hoped at least to see such an item once in his lifetime, yet had never thought that he would be able to come upon a level 10 godly medicine in this life. Could this kind of godly medicine in front of them allow one to immediately become a deity, and directly shatter the void to become a god? Ling Han did not know, but such a godly medicine was right in front of him. There was no justification to him simply passing by, ignoring it. He immediately walked towards the godly medicine, his expression unable to hide the excitement he was feeling. Stop right there. There was a cold humph and 4 men were racing over. Obviously they had also discovered this stock of godly medicine, though they did not know its true value. How could Ling Han bother to pay them any attention? However, these 4 people were not just fast, they had also shot out a long-distance attack. Shio, a flash of light from a saber swept over, a dominating pressure emanating from it. Lu Yutong drew her sword and, ding, managed to block this saber attack. All who manage to find the natural treasures of this world have a share to it. Let us first discuss how we are going to divide it among ourselves. A middle-aged man said as he neared them. Huang Zitao. Lu Yutong's elegant brow wrinkled into a slight frown, showing a sliver of dread in her expression. This man was a clansman of the Huang clan of the 8 great clans. In terms of age, he was older by Lu Yutong by about 10 years, and was in his early 30s. He was in the 5th layer of Gushing Spring tier and was definitely not someone to be underestimated. We take 90% and you guys get 10%. No disagreements, right? Huang Zitao said haughtily. If he knew that this was a stock of godly medicine, then he most probably would not be talking about this kind of division method, and instead immediately kill them off to keep them from divulging the secret, and making this godly medicine his own. No disagreements, your sister. Ling Han directly gave him the middle finger. Chapter 129, Godly Medicine. Damn. Huang Zitao and his companions were stunned for a while before finally reacting. They all brandished their respective weapons in a very aggressive manner. They had already long disliked the look of Ling Han. He was only a single person, but he had managed to obtain the hearts of both twin pearls of the imperial city. Hearing his provocative reply now, how could they hold themselves back anymore? They all brandished their respective weapons in attack and charged towards him. Bullying those who are younger than you, don't you feel the slightest bit of shame? Ling Han snorted, his feet placed in the movements of exiting cloud steps, his sword quivering, shooting out flashes of cold light. Not all of Huang Zitao's party were powerful elites. The other 3 were only in element gathering tier, and they had only dared to charge because Huang Zitao was there to hold up the lines. Ling Han thus placed his focus on these 3 people. The exiting cloud steps was a quick and strange movement, allowing him to dodge every single one of Huang Zitao's attacks. His sword chi danced unhindered, shooting towards the other 3 men. His battle prowess was enough to dominate an ordinary martial artist in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, plus he had also formed 6 flashes of sword chi, so his attack power was definitely domineering. Shwa shwa shwa, the torn pieces of cloth flew everywhere as if they were butterflies, and the 3 men suffering the brunt of his attacks shrieked. The clothing on their bodies was continuously being slashes into pieces, leaving behind one wound after another. Brat, face me directly if you dare. Huang Zitao shouted furiously. Is something wrong with your brain? Ling Han snorted. I'm only in the 6th layer of element gathering tier, yet you're in the 5th layer of gushing spring tier, and you still want me to face you directly? Have you become an idiot from too much martial arts practice? Damn. Huang Zitao once again cursed and shouted loudly, step back, all of you. These 3 people were not able to help him, in the contrary, they were hindering him, making him unable to fully use his abilities. They were even sometimes used as human shields by Ling Han, forcing him to withdraw his saber in the nick of time quite a few times. After the other 3 had stepped back as per his command, Huang Zitao waved his saber, and indeed the area of effect of his attacks expanded. The light of the saber was bitingly cold and, like pouring water, surrounded Ling Han completely. In such a situation he was indeed very much at the advantage, suppressing Ling Han to the point that he was unable to fight back in any way at all and could only dodge to the best of his abilities. Yet Lu Yutong did not fling out any attacks of her own. Instead, she took advantage of the opportunity to continue to advance nearer to that stock of godly medicine. This was the plan that Ling Han had decided on from the start. He would be the one in charge of detaining Huang Zitao, while Lu Yutong would be responsible for plucking the medicinal herb. As long as Huang Zitao was unable to free himself to stop her, then how could a few martial artists of mere element gathering tier be able to match Lu Yutong? Oh no! None of the 3 were idiots, so they very quickly discovered Lu Yutong's movements. They hurriedly pounced, intending to stop her. However, they had moved a little too late, and added with the fact that all 3 were only in element gathering tier, how could they manage to catch up to her? Lu Yutong moved without turning up any dust, quickly making her way to that stock of godly medicine. Just when she saw that she was only about 10 meters away from her target, shwa! A flash of sword chi swept towards her, forcing her to stop her advance. A white-robed young man wielding a sword approached them. His face was like crowning jade and he had black hair. Every step he took was as if he was performing some kind of amazing rhythm of nature, inadvertently attracting the eyes of everyone in the area, becoming the target of everyone's attention. Sun Bu Ren. Lu Yutong's eyes narrowed a bit, revealing an expression of deep dread. Sun Bu Ren, the most outstanding clansman of this generation of the Sun clan. Though he was not one of the core disciples of the Huyang Academy, he was still among the 10 strongest true disciples, having the ability to break into the ranks of the core disciples. His name was originally Sun Ren, yet he later changed his name to Sun Bu Ren. Apparently he has always admired the merciless character of Xiao Xiong, and the way he would use all ends to achieve his means. Thus the name Sun Bu Ren was born. Third layer of gushing spring tier, with unfathomable depths to his battle prowess, should be at least able to reach 5 stars. Yutong girl, could you yield this treasured herb to me? How about it? Sun Bu Ren wore a smile on his face as warm as a gust of wind in spring. Yet those who were familiar with him knew very well that this person was a fickle character. In one instant he could be all smiles, but in the next his face could change completely as he made a move to kill you. I don't agree with that. A light laughter was heard and another person appeared. This newcomer was quite tall, with a handsome appearance, and in terms of aura, was not beneath Sun Bu Ren. Hu Fengyu. Sun Bu Ren's expression tensed. Hu Fengyu was also one of the 10 strongest true disciples of Huyang Academy. Me neither. Another young elite appeared, yet this one was a little fatty. His figure was as round as a wine barrel, yet his appearance caused both Hu Fengyu and Sun Bu Ren to frown. Chen Wu Yong, also one of the 10 strongest true disciples. Alright then. The area was quite empty just now, yet in a few moments so many elite martial artists have appeared. Ling Han and Huang Zitao naturally both ceased fighting. There were too many elite martial artists here, and whoever made the first move was definitely an idiot. Hee, none of you want to make a move? Then this spiritual medicine will belong to me. Chen Wu Yong shot forward. Though he was exceptionally plump, he was also exceptionally fast, and within moments he had reached the stalk of godly medicine. Insolence. Sun Bu Ren, Hu Fengyu and Huang Zitao all acted at the same time. Saber Qi and Sword Qi flew forward in unison, creating a terrifying sight. Chen Wu Yong could not help but turn over in midair to dodge the attacks of these 3 people. Even he would not dare to clash head-on with the united attacks of 3 such elite warriors. However, the deadlock was broken and the 4 of them attacked each other. They would be stopping each other from snatching away the treasured herb, while also trying their best to first get their hands on the treasured herb. All of a sudden the scene was in a complete mess. Ling Han did not move. Instead he simply stood at one side. When the victor was finally decided, he would only need to just take out his treasured saber to snatch back the godly medicine. Huang Zitao and the other 3 had been worried at first that the shock waves from their battle would be too powerful and damage that stock of treasured herb. But after their battle had gone on for a while, they realized that all the energy of their attacks would be blocked from advancing further by the light surrounding the herb once it reached it. The shock wave was unable to spread any farther than that. Now they were even bolder and their movements were even more without care. Sabers and swords flashed as origin power gushed forth. As Ling Han watched, he gave a light nod. Aside from Huang Zitao, all the other 3 were extremely powerful. If it was not for the fact that Huang Zitao had the advantage in terms of cultivation level, he would have been forced out of the battle by the other 3 long ago. Even so, Huang Zitao was the weakest one of the bunch. There was not much difference whether he was there or not. Sun Bu Ren managed to form 3 flashes of sword qi, while Hu Fengyu had 3 flashes of saber qi. The little fatty used claws and similarly had 3 flashes of qi. The 3 of them could be said to be evenly matched, and it was difficult to decide who was the stronger one. They are all among the 10 strongest true disciples of the Academy. As for the question about who is stronger, none of them have revealed their true prowess before, so there is no basis for judgment, Liu Yutong whispered to Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, within 3 months, you will definitely be able to surpass them. If these words were heard by someone else, they'd definitely laugh themselves half to death. One has to know that the reputations of Hu Fengyu and the other 2 in Huyang Academy have all come from the many battles they have fought. They had also spent quite a few years before finally managing to attain the positions they had today. How could they simply be surpassed as easily as that? Yet Liu Yutong was absolutely confident. Her talent was real, plus she was cultivating a heaven-grade cultivation technique and using the alchemical medicines that Ling Han had concocted. There was also the black-grade high-level martial arts technique that she was learning. All these factors added together would definitely allow her to be completely transformed into a new person in 3 months' time. The battle between the 4 gushing spring-tier martial artists was growing fiercer and more violent, inciting flames of rage from all four of them. Seeing that the deadlock was unable to be broken, they all made a move to snatch the stalk of godly medicine, obviously intending to get some benefits first. Fuck. Ling Han cursed. He hurriedly drew the saber and rushed forward. This was a godly medicine, how could he allow it to be damaged? But it was at this very moment that something no one expected happened. The stalk of godly medicine actually removed itself from the ground, slipped, and as if its roots were its legs, it turned a cartwheel on the ground and had broken through the siege of the four of them in an instant. It began racing away at a very fast pace. Fuck. Chapter 130, Played. What the Oya medicinal herb actually uprooted itself and was now racing off. When they witnessed such a scene, everyone was stunned for a moment before finally coming back to themselves and swiftly chasing after the runaway herb. Not even Ling Han had foreseen that something like this would happen. Even if Huang Zitao and the others did not know the origins of this godly medicine, if a herb could actually uproot itself and run away, then with their intelligence, how could they not deduce that the value of this medicinal herb was far, far above what they had imagined? A godly medicinal herb was running in front, while a large group of people was chasing after it. This scene was a bit funny, but no one had the intention to laugh at this moment. They had all put their focus into running, trying to grab hold of the runaway herb. In myths, there were some treasures that had developed consciousness. They could travel underground and fly through the air, and this herb, though it was not traveling underground or flying through the air, since it was able to run around like a human being, its value should not be low. As they ran, the commotion attracted more and more people to join in the ranks of chasers. Ling Han discovered that this stalk of godly medicine was definitely doing this on purpose, because it kept continuously running around in circles, attracting more and more people to chase after it. Yet, it was always in control of maintaining a proper distance, obviously being very skilled at this kind of game. Could a stalk of godly medicine actually develop its own intelligence? When he thought this, Ling Han could not help becoming overwhelmed with shock. A thing like intelligence belonged to human beings and demonic beasts, and some demonic beasts may even have intelligence equal to a human being's, yet he had never heard that plants could have intelligence as well. With the deliberate leading of this stalk of godly medicine, out of the people who have entered this space, at least 3/4 had joined in the race after the godly medicinal herb. However, not one of them managed to catch up to it. They all could only run after its heels and eat dust. "We can't go on like this," someone proclaimed. "Why do I feel like I've been played with by a stalk of spiritual medicine? Although this is an outrageous, but this is what I think, this stalk of godly medicine is evil. Hee, if you think it's evil you can give up. No one's forcing you to run after it." But I'm curious. No one was willing to give up. Now, even idiots should be able to guess that this stalk of godly medicine was unbelievably valuable. There were even some people who had deliberately left to inform those old monsters to have them set up a trap outside so that this stalk of spiritual medicine would not suddenly run off through the underground river and then disappear completely. Hear my command. Everyone move separately and combine forces to catch this stalk of spiritual medicine. The third imperial prince said. Now, the higher ranks have been alerted. According to them, we must apprehend this stalk of spiritual medicine at all costs, so please do not harbor any selfish motives, all of you. Everyone nodded. Since even the higher ranks outside the opening have been alerted, how could they dare to disobey? It was most appropriate for the third imperial prince to take command. Firstly, because he was strong enough, and secondly, because his status was high enough. As one command after another was announced, none dared to disobey. Even Hu Fengyu, Sun Bu Ren, and the others obeyed his commands strictly. On the surface at least there was no disagreement from them. However, Ling Han could deduce that these young men were mostly filled with great ambition. How could they simply give up when such a valuable godly medicine was right in front of their eyes? They were all definitely filled with their own motives. Once they managed to get their hands on it, they would immediately swallow it. Who knows, maybe they would experience a dramatic transformation and in a single step become a god. The circle of people widened, and the stalk of godly medicine kept running into danger in all directions. However, no one had guessed that the godly medicine had not been displaying its full speed at all. It was only now that it was surrounded by danger on all sides that it suddenly showed off a burst of speed, and became as quick as lightning. Once it broke through their siege, the stalk of godly medicine actually raised its roots in their direction, like a human raising his finger. When they thought about it, the finger it was raising was definitely the middle finger. Awesome, this wasn't just a stock of godly medicine, it was also a stock of godly medicine with the character of a ruffian. There was a strange feeling arising in all of them. They had actually been played by a stock of spiritual medicine. I'm so angry, I will definitely eat you. One of them with an impatient character shouted loudly in his anger. The circle of people was once again in place and gradually shrank in size, leaving less and less space for the stock of godly medicine to run around in. Ling Han frowned. With the huge commotion that this stock of godly medicine has stirred up, even if he was able to dominate over everyone here, would he be able to get this stock of godly medicine undamaged? If he ate it in front of the eyes of everyone here, then who knows if he'd be made into human soup by the old monsters waiting outside once he exited this place. That was really something that the old monsters would do because most godly medicines had the ability to extend one's lifespan, and what do those old monsters lack the most? Time in life. He could not help feeling troubled. What could he do now that would allow him to make this stock of godly medicine his own without alerting anyone else to the fact? He had the spatial ring, so there was absolutely no problem for him to conceal it without any trace, but the problem was, how could he acquire the godly medicine without letting anyone else find out? As he continued to run, he continued to ponder this problem. The godly medicine was now forced into a corner. After all, there were too many people here, so no matter how fast it was completely useless. Ling Han stopped abruptly and gasped, "Danger!" Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan did not have the slightest doubt about his words, so they immediately stopped, but the others all snorted at him. This brat must be trying to fool them. They have already entered this place for quite a long time, when had they encountered with any kind of danger here? Although this was the belly of the mountain, there was always light flickering all around them, allowing their environment to be without a single hint of darkness. Yet in front of them appeared a dark space, as if it was a gigantic maw of a monster waiting to swallow them. Xiao, the godly medicine had already run in and everyone else was right at its heels. But all of a sudden, ping 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 ping. It was as if they had ran into an invisible wall, and they were immediately bounced back. Some of them were still fine, only coming out with bleeding wounds. Yet there were others who had been seriously injured, and some of their bones were poking out of their skin. The godly medicine stopped and once again used its roots to signal at them, provoking them. There was no one angry this time though, because they all came off quite horribly from the crash, and had not yet regained their breaths. Bastard! One of them immediately raced to Ling Han, and used his finger to point at Ling Han's nose. "Since you know there was danger ahead, why didn't you say so early on? Can you be a bit reasonable?" Lu Yutong put herself in front of Ling Han, a baleful look on her face. "Didn't Ling Han already tell you there was danger ahead? You all were the ones that didn't stop running." "Heng, you didn't say so clearly, who knows what that danger is?" Someone argued illogically, saying loudly, "Ling Han, if you're a man then step out here. Don't let a woman defend you." This person was in the 8th layer of element gathering tier, and so naturally was completely no match against Lu Yutong. But Ling Han was only in the 6th layer of element gathering tier, making him think that Ling Han was an easy target. Sigh, ugly people do everything to attract attention. Ling Han lightly pushed Lu Yutong to one side. Lu Yutong could not help feeling a bit worried. She was naturally not worried that Ling Han would get hurt, but rather was worried that this guy had too quick a temper, and would kill off this guy that was deliberately provoking him. In that case it wouldn't be easy to settle things. "Don't worry. For the sake of Miss Lu, I will be merciful." The person laughed coldly. The reason why he had deliberately provoked Ling Han was only to make him suffer a bit, so that Ling Han's image in Lu Yutong's eyes would be ruined. Pa. He had just finished talking, and his face had suffered a heavy slap. He could feel a burning pain on his cheek. He stared blankly for a moment, before realizing that he had been slapped by Ling Han. Instantly, he flew into a rage and similarly raised his palm, striking towards Ling Han. Pa! Ling Han's palm once again rose and struck his face. He had moved later yet had hit his target first and once again gave him a slap. Moreover, the force of the blow was exceptionally strong, causing the man's figure to sway. The palm that he had raised naturally did not hit anything. He could not believe this reality, and so once again aimed a slap at Ling Han. Pa 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 pa. He was really unlucky this time as Ling Han slapped his face repeatedly. Chapter 131, Breaking into the Forbidden Area. Anyone else not convinced? Ling Han stopped moving and smiled at the others. Everyone else shook their heads. This guy was really too fierce. Anyone who was not in Gushing Spring Tier was completely unqualified to come to blows with Ling Han. The few Gushing Spring Tier martial artists gave a humph. They had no fear of Ling Han, yet they dreaded facing Liu Yutong. Currently, Liu Yutong had her sword in hand and was standing guard by Ling Han's side, so no one dared to make any reckless moves. Most importantly, they did not have the time to bother with Ling Han right now. That stock of spiritual medicine had escaped into the mysterious zone, so the most important thing now was how they were going to tempt it out of there. More and more people poured out to surround this area on all sides. This was probably the central zone of the whole underground space. It was circular in shape and occupied quite a large area. Most importantly, that dark area seemed to be swallowing all of the surrounding light as if it was a solid object, capable of blocking their sight. A person standing at one end would not be able to see the other end at all. Thankfully, there were enough people who had entered here, and could somewhat ensure that this area was completely surrounded. At least, if that stock of godly medicine ventured out, they would know instantly. What now? After they had formed a circle around the dark area, everyone asked awkwardly. Make sure it's trapped. I don't believe it's never coming back out. Someone said. Are you stupid? That is a plant. It can completely dig its roots inside for a few years to a few hundred years, but what about us? We would have to leave after 3 days at most. Another person rebuked. Oh right. The person who had spoken earlier said with a bit of embarrassment. Everyone was frowning in thought. That was definitely a stock of spiritual medicine and may have even reached the legendary godly level, yet they could only stand here and watch. This feeling was really about to drive them crazy. Some of them left to inform the old monsters waiting outside the opening, hoping that they could have some idea about what to do, while the others continued to stand guard here. Ling Han slowly neared that invisible wall. He stretched out a hand to feel it. A very familiar feeling. A sliver of a smile turned up the corners of Ling Han's lips. Years ago, he had ventured to a lot of ancient historical sites and had witnessed a lot of similar situations. That was also why he had shouted out the warning earlier on. This was not a wall but an aura field that was at a level above Heaven Tier. If he was still in Heaven Tier, then based on the studies he had done on this kind of aura field, he could break through it by force and allow himself to pass through, but now, he was completely unqualified to attempt that kind of thing. Could it be that he would have to use that? Ling Han took out the damaged saber. This was his disciple's treasured saber, and could also possibly be the only remnant of his disciple that he would be able to find. If he used all the remaining might of the spiritual tool in a single explosive burst, he should be able to forcibly use the power on par with Heaven Tier. But the problem was, such an explosive burst would also mean the complete end of this treasured saber. Ling Han hesitated. Moreover, there was another problem. This treasured saber could only explode with such power once, so after he entered, how was he going to get back out? But after a short moment he finally made his decision. He had to go in. Because there was not only the godly medicine inside. The secret behind that great battle years ago should also be hidden there, and he wanted to find out the reason for that battle. Moreover, if there was really the corpse of an ultimate warrior of Shattering Void Tier inside that had formed this aura field, then who knows, he may have a way to disperse this aura field. You two cover for me, Ling Han said to Liu Yutong and Li Xichan. As this area was very big, everyone was standing about 10 meters apart from each other to completely surround this area. Thus, Ling Han was standing in between the two girls. It would not be very easy for the people standing at the other side of the two girls to notice him there if they weren't paying attention. The two girls did not know what he intended to do, but they both nodded, because they knew that this guy had the ability to achieve the impossible. Ling Han began to revive the treasured saber. Jiang Yufeng's martial intent originated from him, and though he was extremely weak at the moment, their martial arts were of the same vein. With the stimulation of his divine sense, the martial intent engraved in the treasured saber began to awaken. The seals on the treasured saber began to light up one by one, shining brightly. However, this was the last light that would be coming from it. Soon, it would become completely ordinary like any other normal weapon. Ling Han did not have the slightest bit of hesitation. He used the treasured saber to pierce through the aura field to open up a path for himself. Even so, he was still in a very emotionally tense state. The treasured saber in his hand was shaking as if it was a fish out of water, and even his body was shaking along with it from the force of its quivering, so much that he was forced to walk in a zigzag pattern. His figure instantly disappeared into that dark area and could no longer be seen. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan were both dumbstruck with shock. They exchanged a look with each other, and in the other's eyes, they could both see deep astonishment as well as strong admiration. Was there anything that this youth this man could not do? They quickly withdrew their gazes and became alert, focusing on the task of covering for Ling Han to ensure that no one would notice that he had disappeared. Otherwise, even if Ling Han did manage to get any treasure based on his current ability, he would not be able to keep it. Sweat covered Ling Han's whole body. There was danger everywhere in this aura field. Years ago, when he was still in Heaven Tier, a single wrong step would mean severe injury for him, and with his current cultivation level of only the 6th layer of Element Gathering Tier now, this was practically trying to pull chestnuts out of a roaring fire. Any slightest bit of mistake could cost his life, and there were definitely no second chances. Yet this made him even more excited. He was completely focused and his eyes were extremely bright. There was usually not much difference between a genius and a maniac. In his last life he had put his focus on alchemy. Once he began to concoct alchemical pills, it would be as if he had transformed into a maniac, and this life he had put his focus on martial arts, and so similarly also had one part of him that was a maniac, though he had not had a chance to display this part of him before. This kind of situation where danger was surrounding him on all sides caused his whole body to shiver, yet also made him even more excited. To be wavering between the boundaries of life and death allowed him to deeply feel the significance of life, and his divine sense was surging like oceanic waters. He even had a kind of feeling that perhaps this kind of dangerous place was the only way to train one's divine sense. The light from the treasured saber began to flicker, and Ling Han experienced a shock. The damage to this treasured saber was far worse than he had imagined. It had only withstood such a short while, and it looked like it was about to go out. Although he enjoyed taking risks, but taking risks and going straight to his death were two different things. He hurriedly sped up. As he had to calculate the changes within the aura field, his mind was extremely focused, and his mental energy was being expended at a very fast rate. The sweat covering his whole body was dripping down like water, and in a few short moments had dampened all his clothes and even left behind traces of water underneath his steps. Yet it was as if he did not feel anything. His eyes were bright and he continued to advance. The treasured saber gave a final flicker and the light from all the seals vanished all at once, the seals shattering. This meant that the martial intent inside the treasured saber had been completely wiped out. Ling Han took a leap and charged out with a loud breath. He had finally managed to make his way out of the area that had been sealed in by the aura field. Light had again appeared in front of him. This was an area that was only about 100 feet in size. In the center, there was a corpse that was sitting in a cross-legged position on the ground, and that stalk of godly medicine was currently working hard on rooting itself into the ground. However, it seemed like the ground here was especially hard. Such a long time had passed, yet the stalk of godly medicine had only managed to insert half of its roots into the ground. Ling Han's eyes lit up, and he quietly approached the stalk of godly medicine. He did not know if there was a back and face to the godly medicine, but it was obvious that the stalk of godly medicine had not yet noticed that he was there. 10 steps, 8 steps, 5 steps, 3 steps. Ling Han suddenly leaped out and stretched out a hand to grab that stalk of godly medicine. Chapter 132, 3 Roots. The godly medicine was doing its best to dig its roots into the ground, and had not thought that anyone would have been able to suddenly break into the area sealed off by the aura field. Thus, it was completely caught unprepared by Ling Han, quickly pulling its roots out of the ground, ready to race off again. But this time it was one step too late. Though its movements were indeed very quick, and it had already removed its roots from the ground, Ling Han's hand also managed to grab onto its roots. The godly medicine looked like it had experienced a huge fright. Even the flower that was blooming had instantly withdrawn all its petals, and even the stem was twisted and bent. But in the next instant, it suddenly started to struggle fiercely, and it actually flew out of his grasp. It scrambled into the area sealed off by the aura field, and in mere moments had completely disappeared within the darkness. Ling Han was astounded. When he uncurled his fist and took a look, there were 3 torn-off roots left in his grip. There was a milky white liquid dripping from the torn-off ends of the roots, and all of a sudden, an indescribable refreshing fragrance filled the air, making his whole body relax. It was as if he was about to become as light as a feather and ascend to heaven. This was the godly medicine. How could Ling Han dare to waste it? He quickly stuck out his tongue to suck and lick clean that milky white liquid. Any single drop wasted would be an unforgivable sin. It's invigorating. So damn invigorating. Just a whiff of this godly medicine was enough to make him feel light as a feather and ready to ascend to heaven. Swallowing the several drops of liquid made this feeling even stronger, as if all the pores of his body were completely open and spiritual chi was automatically gushing in, nurturing his entire body. It was a feeling too amazing for mere words. His divine sense in particular had been greatly augmented, and his blood, flesh, nerves, and bones had all obtained a similar upgrade. His cultivation level, on the other hand, had increased the least. The value of the godly medicine is not in upgrading one's cultivation level, Ling Han thought. He expanded his divine sense and closely observed the changes taking place within his body. Vitality. This was the conclusion that he had come to. With the nurturing effects of the godly medicine, his body and its vitality had obtained a great upgrade. Any martial artist would know that a human being had a mere lifespan of about 100 years. Only if one managed to break through to Flower Blossom Tier would they be able to break the restrictions of being mortal and gain another 200 years of life. Otherwise, even if they ate some kind of 1,000-year ginseng, it would only aid them in slowing down their aging process at most, and thus allow one to live for another few years. Why could a Flower Blossom Tier martial artist obtain another 200 years of life? That was because the vitality within his body had been strengthened. After Flower Blossom Tier, every breakthrough to a new tier would mean a new transformation, continuing to gain more and more life and vitality, and continuously increasing one's lifespan. Most importantly, there was a lapse after Heaven Tier. Since a Heaven Tier martial artist could reach Shattering Void Tier, then the longest lifespan of a martial artist was limited to 1,000 years. A godly medicine could achieve the same kind of effect. He had just swallowed a few drops of the godly fluid, and Ling Han's life and vitality had obtained a great upgrade. As someone who had once been a powerful warrior of Heaven Tier, he could make a rough estimate. He had roughly gained an extra 20 years of life. 20 years. Just a few drops. If he had managed to swallow the whole stock of godly medicine, how many extra years of life would he have been able to get? 1,000 years. That was the lowest estimate. That was equivalent to a powerful warrior of Heaven Tier getting another lifetime to live, and for mortals, that would be another 10 lifetimes. What was the most valuable thing in this world? It was not cultivation technique, martial arts technique, or wealth. It was life. That was another extra 1,000 years of life. This would be enough to drive powerful martial artists of Heaven Tier crazy. Ling Han stored the 3 roots of the godly medicine into the spatial ring. Increasing lifespan was one of the effects of the godly medicine, and naturally was the greatest effect, but there were other uses for it to reform the physical body, and thoroughly clear away the impurities accumulated in one's body. He had a heaven-grade spirit base, but this did not mean that his body was also heaven-grade. On the other hand, he had a very normal body. However, after he had began cultivating the invincible heaven scroll, his physical body had ascended to the level of body of dead tree, and he was able to match those races with special constitution. In other words, his body was still very far from the level of perfection. At least, there were still 3 different levels ahead of him: body of rock cliff, body of iron sheet, and body of diamond. Moreover, this was only the first level of the invincible heaven scroll. Godly medicine can help one to improve one's physical body. Who knows, I may be able to use it to achieve body of rock cliff. Ling Han's eyes lit up. If he managed to learn body of rock cliff, not only would his defenses be even stronger than before, he would also be able to condense another 2 drops of indestructible true fluid. He would then have altogether 3 drops, so he would have even more trump cards in hand. It's too bad. If I had an intact stock of godly medicine, I may be able to soar right up to body of iron sheet or possibly even body of diamond. He could not help feeling very regretful, but he soon laughed in spite of himself. Then he said to himself, a man can't be too greedy. In my last life I did not see even a level 9 treasure, and now, at the mere level of the 6th layer of element gathering tier, I not only saw a level 10 godly medicine, I have even obtained 3 of its roots. If I am still unsatisfied with this, then I really deserve to be struck by lightning. He cast his eyes at that corpse sitting in the center. He had a feeling that this was the source of everything. This corpse had obviously experienced a great battle. At least more than 100 of his bones had been shattered. It was very hard to imagine how he could have managed to continue fighting when he had had so many of his bones broken. Ling Han slowly approached and took a closer look at it, and could not help becoming astonished. There were actually multiple golden characters on these bones. However, perhaps too much time had passed, or perhaps this person was too heavily injured, for these characters have all practically dimmed. However, this did not hinder Ling Han from feeling the might of these golden characters. Rather than saying these were written characters, it would be more appropriate to say they were part of a designa design that illustrated the powers of nature, and used these characters as a method of displaying them. Wait. Ling Han startled, the invincible heaven scroll is also like this, because I have no way to use mere words to recite it out. He came to a sudden understanding. No wonder he had needed 10,000 years just to comprehend the first level of cultivation technique. That was because it had far surpassed the level of mere words, and had reached a whole new level. However, although I have only taken one look, I can confirm that these golden characters on the bones are no match for the invincible heaven scroll. The complexity level of the two were completely different. But I can definitely conclude that this is the corpse of a powerful warrior of shattering void tier. If I am able to pry apart even a single shred of his martial intent, it would definitely be very beneficial to me when I break through to shattering void tier in the future. Ling Han said to himself. He widened his eyes, intending to memorize these golden characters. Hong, a red flame suddenly gushed out of the skeleton. It was dazzlingly bright and there was a wave of heat that surged from it, causing Ling Han to take a few steps back. A red-colored flame floated above the skeleton, and formed into various shapes as if it had its own life. A strange fire. Ling Han gasped out in surprise. Strange fire was a very strange substance born from nature. It could also be described as a type of energy, and it was indescribably valuable to martial artists and alchemists alike, for once a martial artist refined the strange fire, he could refine his own physical body, raise his cultivation level, or even develop some fire-type martial arts technique, and if an alchemist fused with the strange fire, he would get a great advantage when concocting alchemical pills. Why? Because the most important thing in concocting alchemical pills was fire control. However, a martial artist had limited power, so the heat of the flames one could produce was extremely limited, but the strange fire could increase this limit by a considerable number of times and allow an alchemist to gain much more room to exercise his abilities. For example, for Ling Han, based on his ability, he could concoct alchemical pills as high as heaven grade. However, due to the limitations of his cultivation level, he could not do so because he was unable to produce flames with such a high level of heat to heat his alchemy furnace. But, if he were to fuse with a strange fire, then while concocting heaven-grade alchemical pills would still be impossible, there was a great possibility that he would be able to concoct earth-grade alchemical pills. Even if it was not possible for him now, by the time he broke through to gushing spring tier, he should be about able to. Instantly, his eyes lit up. Chapter 133, Fusion. Ling Han's only feeling now was that his luck in this life was unbelievably, illogically great. In his last life, although he was an ultimate warrior of heaven tier, whether it was the godly medicine or the strange fire, he had not even managed to see either of them. But in this life he was only in the 6th layer of element gathering tier, and he has already seen both these extremely rare items, and had even managed to obtain 3 roots of the godly medicine. He could also manage to make this strange fire his own. Ling Han's heartbeat sped up in spite of himself. The strange fire could allow him to concoct alchemical pills of a higher grade than he could at his current cultivation level. The extremely high heat of the strange fire could also become one of the hidden cards up his sleeve. He was a bit curious now. How did this strange fire come to be? One has to know that there are many types of strange fires, but there was a need to meet certain requirements for each type to form. The most common type of strange fire was of course those born in the depths of a volcano, but there were also some special types of strange fires that were born within cold places, or even within freezing ice. These were known as flames of ice, and they had the ability to freeze living things to death. But what about this place? Ling Han could not think of any conditions here that would induce the birth of a strange fire, aside from this corpse in front of him. This corpse had been an ultimate warrior of shattering void tier when he was alive. Could it be that an ultimate warrior of shattering void tier was even able to form strange fires? Ling Han pondered in his thoughts, though his eyes were still fixed upon that strange fire wavering in front of him, thinking of how he might be able to make the strange fire his own. If he still had the cultivation level of heaven tier, then there would naturally be no problem. He would only need to dominate it by force. But with his current cultivation level of the 6th layer of element gathering tier, if he dared to attempt to take it by force, the most likely scenario would be being burnt to ashes. Little fire, come, come, come. You'll stay with me from now on. Ling Han acted like he was calling over a little puppy. The strange fire continued to morph into various shapes, and ignored him completely. That was natural. How could the strange fire be able to understand human language? Ling Han gritted his teeth. If he used divine sense, he would be able to skip over using mere words to communicate with the strange fire, but the problem was, did he dare to use his divine sense to come into contact with that strange fire? The might of the strange fire was more than enough to completely burn his divine sense to ashes. At least, the first level of cultivation technique of the Invincible Heaven Scroll did not include a method to heal one's divine sense. But, to just give up the strange fire like this was not something he could do. He thought furiously and suddenly came up with an idea. Could he ask the Black Tower for help? He had a feeling that the level of the Black Tower was above even this ultimate warrior of shattering void tier, so it should be able to dominate over this strange fire. The problem was that although the Black Tower was currently staying in his body, it definitely had the character of a boss, and usually more or less ignored him. Would it actually help him? Let's give it a try. He used his divine sense to move the Black Tower, yet Master Black was completely unmoved and ignored him. Ling Han was not the slightest bit discouraged, and continued to use his divine sense to harass the Black Tower. He had already witnessed it once before. The Black Tower was not an inanimate object. Finally, the Black Tower gave a light quiver and emitted a shock wave. He did not feel anything from this shock wave, but there appeared even more shattered seals on the bones of the corpse, completely unable to withstand the shock wave from the Black Tower. The strange fire looked like it was a little girl that had received a huge fright. It suddenly shrank into itself and was trembling. Ling Han's heart moved and beckoned the strange fire over. A surprising scene happened. The strange fire actually leaped into his hand. What was even more surprising was the fact that Ling Han did not feel any bit of scalding heat on his hand. The strange fire indeed had its own spirit. Ling Han bravely communicated with the strange fire, using his divine sense to transmit his thoughts over, and said, "Little guy, you stay with me from now on, and I will find even more strange fires, and let you all fuse together to finally become the most powerful flame of this world." Using divine sense to transmit ideas was a communication method that surpassed the limitations of language and race. Any existence with consciousness would be able to understand. Yeah. The strange fire transmitted a blurry thought, like it was an infant just learning how to speak, so it was very indistinct. Ling Han finally understood. Though this strange fire had developed its own consciousness, its intelligence was too low, as if it was a newborn baby. Kids should be very easily duped, right? Ling Han emitted a kind aura, allowing the strange fire enough time to think things through. In truth, he was not lying. In the future, if he encountered a strange fire again, he would definitely make a move and continue to fuse the strange fires he managed to obtain together, increasing the might of the strange fire. In this world, all living creatures have an instinctive desire to become stronger and closer to perfection. The strange fire was no exception. It was unable to cultivate, but it was able to fuse with other strange fires to increase its own intelligence and might. Ling Han did not rush things and continued to communicate with the strange fire. He had the confidence that the strange fire would eventually agree, because the Black Tower had just displayed its might, allowing the strange fire to feel that he was a man with power. A talented person would choose a good master to serve, as the saying goes. The intelligence of the strange fire was still at a simple level, and could be described as extremely innocent. Thus, if there was a need for it to choose a master, then the first thing it would consider would be the strength of its master. It was all right even if Ling Han's cultivation level wasn't very high, as long as the Black Tower was awesome enough. Yeah. The strange fire transmitted blurry thoughts and all of a sudden, disappeared into Ling Han's palm, and like a drop of water sinking into sand, it was immediately absorbed and entered Ling Han's body. Ling Han had never obtained a strange fire before, but in his last life he had managed to acquire the correct method on how to refine and absorb it, and so was not unfamiliar with the next step. Now that the strange fire was in his body, he had two choices. The first choice was to refine the strange fire and erase its intelligence, transforming it into pure energy to nurture and strengthen himself. The second was to fuse with the strange fire and preserve its intelligence, something like making his body the new residence of the strange fire. For a martial artist, they would definitely choose the first option without any bit of hesitation. But how could Ling Han break his word, even if it was one given to a strange fire? Moreover, he still needed to concoct alchemical pills, so naturally the best option was to preserve the strange fire intact. He fused with the strange fire, and the little guy was coiled in Ling Han's left hand, fusing with Ling Han's soul. The black tower lightly trembled, possessing the might to dominate over everything, allowing the process to be exceptionally smooth. After a mere half an hour, the fusion process was complete. Ling Han's eyes snapped open. He stretched open his left hand, and a raging red flame burnt upon his palm. Yet this was not something powered by his origin power, but rather came from the strange fire. Yeah. The strange fire also emitted delighted thoughts, seeming to be very pleased with Ling Han's body. Go! Ling Han waved his left hand, and the strange fire instantly left his hand. With a mental command from him, it began to continuously dance and move around on the ground. He beckoned his hand again, and the strange fire flew back to him and once again disappeared into his left hand. Ha, now my battle prowess has gotten another upgrade. With the raging flames of the strange fire, I'd be able to kill even spiritual ocean tier martial artists. What more mere gushing spring tier? However, how to get near them is a problem. No one would be foolish enough to allow the strange fire to get near them. However, if I allow the strange fire to coil around my fists or around the blade of my sword, then when others underestimate me due to their own carelessness, there is a real possibility I'd be able to kill them right on the spot. Then let's just see who would be so unfortunate. Ling Han looked once more at the corpse. Due to the several shock waves emanating from the black tower, more and more broken seals were appearing on the bones, and the golden characters were no longer identifiable, making him feel a strong regret. That was the martial intent of a powerful warrior of shattering void tier. Forget it. I'm being too greedy. Ling Han said, my gains this time are already indescribably colossal, and what use would the martial intent of an ultimate warrior of shattering void tier be to me now? I am able to soar smoothly all the way to heaven tier in the first place. Now the problem is, how do I get out of here? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.